who may not know, let me say, you know, what people don't know about young men and women like Edward is that while they were in their early teens and late adolescence, when the cultural community and theater community came back, we put together performances with empty audiences where there were just 3 and 4 people while everybody was working on those productions. And it wasn't because we worried about who would come or how much money the theater or the production would make. It was because we knew we had budding stars and folk like you, and that the creativity would also come up with a solution. So one of the solutions is continue supporting our culture.
In the arts.
Understand our culture. It's therapeutic. It's psychologic. It's comforting. Man, keep doing what you're doing. And I know Willie and Tori and all of your friends and Gwen and Will and Anthony and everybody who expects you to succeed, know that you've already succeeded, but there's a whole lot more for you to do. Keep doing what you're doing, fam. We love you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Green.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to thank you for your work and for sharing your artistic talents, and also for taking time out to talk about people, youth, children that don't get to be often heard from following such as the tragedies that we had during Hurricane Katrina and in other instances too. And those voices have to be heard more. You spoke from your experiences, but also I could see in the documentary a tremendous commitment to sharing the message with the entire nation that it turns out now that we need to think about the effects that these sort of disasters or activities have on our youth. Can't do that enough, to be very honest with you, because it's so easy to forget when you look at headlines and you see stories of neighborhoods that have been devastated, or you see physical loss and you see financial loss. Sometimes you don't think about the effect that it has on those who are most easily impacted, and that's our youth. So your documentary, your work did a tremendous service to our community, and I just want to thank you for sharing your talents, and encourage you to continue doing exactly as you're doing, because I know that you're very committed. The voices of youth need to be heard more, they need to be understood, and they need to be sympathized with in terms of responding to tragedies in their communities. Too often in our community, we see tragedies involving youth, and we want to do something about it, and that's very important. But sometimes we forget to talk to the youth and maybe find out what's going on with them. You talk to the nation and let them know that when there's a disaster such as this, they need to really continue to remember that there are youth who are impacted. So thank you for your recovery, but not only for your recovery, but for sharing your experiences with others. I appreciate your commitment.
Thank you.
Councilmember Murrah.
Edward, Mrs. Buckle. I really don't know where to start. I think sometimes when we talk about the problems facing our city, one of my mentors, very important person in my life, is a woman named Sabrina Mays. I know many of y'all know her. And oftentimes she reminds me, as we have these overall dialogues about the state of the city, state of crime, the state of disrepair, she always reminds me of the single line. She goes, you have to remember that Katrina was a defining point for a whole generation of people, and you have Katrina babies raising babies.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we often forget that generational trauma has defined us as Black people in America. And when you look at what happened in New Orleans during Katrina and what it did to a generation of people, not just the people who are older and more, who are past their formative years, but those who really in their most formative years experienced such substantial trauma that upended and really redefined them as people. When we look, what I wish everybody in New Orleans would watch your film, because we have probably half the population of New Orleans moved here after Katrina.
Yeah.
And I will tell you at the time, my mom was in when the levees broke with Spike Lee. And I remember how everybody in the nation saw it. And it really was a very political film. It was about the outrage of how we got to a point that after all this neglect, Corps of Engineers, the levees breaking, but really it was a snapshot of a moment. And that was the moment right after Katrina when we were all just like, why did this happen? When I talk to people who have moved here and have so much impatience for why things are the way they are, they do not understand what it was like for those of us who lived through Katrina and had to limp and move forward after Katrina. They don't understand that if they moved here from Colorado or from New York or from Houston, they didn't have a Katrina moment that basically wiped out and reset their city. And so they hold us to a standard of, well, you're just another American city like everybody else. And it's like it's not the same, because we went through something that was so traumatic to older and particularly younger people. It just redefined who we were as people, and we're still struggling with that. And I say, I wish the people who moved here would see it, because they don't understand. They don't understand why the city is in the state it's in. They don't understand why you have kids who don't have a care in the world for their lives, their livelihood, their future. And it's because many of them who have parents who suffered through that trauma don't understand that their parents had their entire childhood upended, in some ways taken away, and they're now raising kids.
Right.
So in a lot of ways, and I mean, whether or not Spike Lee's watching, I don't really care, but I mean, in a lot of ways, as someone who watched both films, I feel like as a New Orleanian, your film more appropriately captures Katrina and what it really was. I appreciated the other film because it was important for that moment. But if you want to know what Katrina did to our city, if you want to know what Katrina is doing to our city, your film's the only film that captures that. I mean, honestly, I'm also probably unpopular. So I wish Treme, the TV show, had never happened, because I think all these different efforts from people who are not from here to define what Katrina did to us who live here were a disservice, because none of them appropriately captured what it was like. And every one of them tried to give their version of what we went through. And your film truly captures what our community went through and what our community is going through. And it's just such an important must-see film. I'm so glad it's won so many awards. I'm sure it will continue to win awards. I will tell you that the fact that you got such a glowing review from Robert Ebert, who is the most cantankerous, not get it reviewer of film in the universe, tells you that if you could get through to him and make him understand on some fundamental level what Katrina did to the city, man, anybody watching your film is not going to walk away from it not touched by what New Orleans was and what New Orleans is. So thank you so much. I'm sure y'all are proud. Y'all are proud of him. We're all proud of you and look forward to whatever you do next.
Thank you so
Councilmember
much.
Harris.
Thank you.
Edward, and your family, thank you for being here today. I don't think that I can say more than what was already said. The impacts, again, of generational trauma are significant, and you captured that moment. When I watched this film, I cried because it's just so poignant, and you can see exactly how the impact of that moment, of that disaster, has reverberated into what we're facing right now and what our young people are facing right now. What I hope you don't have to do is come back 10 years from now, 5 years from now, and talk about this moment right now that we're in, where we're facing an inflection point, where gun violence is so high, where young people are getting killed at such an alarming rate. I don't want you to have to document that and those impacts and that generational impact that we're going to see again and again. What I do want to highlight is something that you said, that the arts are so important and so saving in a young person's life. And so we as a city council need to ensure that we support arts education and arts opportunities in this community. I know that there are some, but they're not highlighted as much, and they're not available to everybody who needs them. And my final point is this: for the thousands of people who are watching this meeting right now, or we'll go back and watch it. I think what they need to do is understand where we are in New Orleans. And they can do that by watching your film. It should be required watching to every citizen of New Orleans who is living in the city right now and who don't understand what's happening in the city, because it just puts a point on what is happening. And again, I just want to thank you for highlighting this by making people really truly understand where we are as a city and how we need to go forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Jeruso.
Good morning. I guess I'm going to come at it from a slightly different angle, which is my wife and I moved back to New Orleans in 2004 and our house in Broadmoor flooded. And I remember thinking sort of two things. Number one is I'm thankful I didn't have any kids yet, because you worry about how are you going to raise them in this environment and what is everything going to look like for them and all of the uncertainty that you don't have. And then number two, we had all the resources that we needed. I lived with my in-laws. Everything was taken care for us. We moved back to the city in November. And yeah, it was tough because you couldn't go everywhere you wanted to and the lights didn't work, and maybe saw a National Guard in the middle of parks with their big guns, remember? But it wasn't, where am I going to go to school? Where are my friends? Where's my next meal coming from? And I think that part of the story needs to be told as well. And I'm thankful for your artistry in being able to tell that. And I agree with everything Councilmember Harris has said, and what you said to start with is, I know we're going to talk about NOPD later today, and that is an important part of public safety, but it's also, as you said, the mental health portion of this. How are we looking at root causes? And I know this council has made a commitment in funding recreation, arts work, making sure that we have things for kids to do starting out, funding early childhood education as an important part of all of that. And my hope is we're going to bring the mental health collaborative that I talked about in September back here in either late March or early April, because I truly believe mental health is such an important piece, and that we don't have enough available for everybody and people don't seek it the way that they ought to. And so I welcome every opportunity to work on you with that. I think our first steering committee meeting is going to be in the first couple of weeks.
Okay.
And I however we can work with kids, adults, those who are trauma informed, we're going to do and make it work out. So thank you for this piece of art that's going to live for forever.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Let me just read the bottom of the proclamation. The top is a little lengthy, but let me read the proclamation piece. At the request of City Council President Helena Moreno, be it proclaimed by the City of New Orleans that the council celebrates New Orleans' own Edward Buckles Jr. and his poignant film, Katrina Babies. Your talent, heart, leadership, and empathy bring an unwavering light to these powerful stories. Signed by all 7 members of the New Orleans City Council. Congratulations to you.
Thank you so much.
We'll come down,
Thank you.
take a picture with you, okay?
Can I say one last thing? Real short, I swear, real short. Thank y'all for like all of those, super powerful words. The New Yorker did an article on the film, and the title was "How many generations of Katrina babies are there?" And something that you said made me think about that. And I think that the answer to that question is up to us. I think that, I was 13 when the storm happened. I wound up teaching high school for 5 years after, once I, got older, and I realized that my students were dealing with some of the same things that I dealt with. So I think that, to answer the question, how many generations of Katrina babies are there? I think that, we can answer that by, putting everything that we just talked about in place. So thank y'all for honoring me. I really appreciate it. It means the world, and much love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. You guys one more, a little bit further. Nailed it. Thanks, guys. No, no.
All right. No. We haven't started the meeting yet. Yep. Keith and Ada, come on down. Come on down, Keith and Ada. Oh, Ada, you gotta come with them. Come on down. Come sit at that table. You know where you're going. You know what's happening now, Keith. You better get down here. He doesn't want to get down here. No, he could. Keith, if you don't sit at this table, we're gonna make you stay.
Go back there then. Go back there.
Hello.
Is-
Thank you. I got my tag team partner. I feel better now.
That's why I had Ada come down for emotional support.
Yes.
Because, you know, Keith does get emotional, as
Yeah.
you know.
Turn all the cameras off just in case an ugly
Cameras on
cry.
now, just for the whole city. So, as many of y'all may or may not know, my chief of staff, Keith Lampkin, is moving on. And I would like to begin by saying how grateful my office, my staff, our family has been in that Keith originally volunteered for a short tour to do transition. and yet stayed for a whole year to make sure it was a thorough transition. Now, for those of you who don't know Keith, Keith is the longest serving council staffer currently on the city council. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of city code, which in itself is very daunting to have someone who you work with, who technically works for you, but knows more than you. But it's always been a benefit. I'm so grateful to his wife, Ada, and his son, Connor, for loaning us Keith, because I know he takes his work home with him every single day. He befriends every single person that comes to the council with a problem, and even seeks out people in the audience who don't want to talk to find out what their problems are to see how he can solve it. Although Keith is originally from Bentonia, Mississippi, which I don't even can't even pretend what that is on a map.
The woods.
He fell in love with New Orleans and made it his home. And to say that he has built lasting relationships throughout this community would really be an understatement. He is a bright, patient, kind, intelligent, caring, helpful, and hardworking person who anyone who's worked with Keith, I remember before when I was in the Senate, people would tell me randomly, have you worked with Jason's chief of staff, Keith Lampkin? He's delightful. So people were singing your praises out of school when you weren't even the topic of conversation. Keith is a former public defender like myself, which goes to show you that being a former public defender is an asset, not a liability, Keith. He's worked for 3 different council members. And I know one of the things he's most proud of is he has worked extensively with Big Duck, Jerome Smith, who does not often these days take young men under his wing, but holds you in the highest of esteems. And that is a very tough nut to crack, but you certainly are someone who's very important to him. I want to list some of this ridiculous number of organizations you're involved with, because half of these I didn't know. I don't know how you were my chief of staff and did all this additional work, but you're a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity.
Big five.
You're on the lead policy advisory board, the city opioid task force, Red Racial and Ethnic Disparity Subcommittee of Sandy Krasnoff, Criminal Justice Council, the Smart Cities Global Think Tank, the Ben Lavick, you got the Ben Lavick Award from OPD for Parity. You're a DBI board member. You're a National Public Defender Board lead fellow, and you were a very expert panelist for the Atlantic magazine. Keith, I do not know how we would have accomplished all we did in this last year without you. The amount of times that you were able to tell me that thing you want to do is something that we can do, and the amount of times you told me that thing you want to do is something we can't do because it's not something the council does, I cannot count the amount of times where you intervened to help me be successful or stop me from doing something that was ridiculously stupid. And I can tell you that.
What are we going to do now?
Well, I still have his cell phone number. And I cannot begin to tell you how incredibly jealous we all are that your big brother, our DA, Mr. Williams, has poached you from my office. And all I will tell you is, as you leave our office, and I've told you this repeatedly, you make sure he treats you right because we control his budget. And if you have any problems, you let us know. So I want to give the other council members an opportunity to give a comment before I close. I think you should probably wait till the end, because I think you want to respond to some. I mean, this is partially us being grateful, partially a roast. So I know you want that opportunity for response, but we are so grateful from the time you've given us. And I am thanking you in advance for all of the late night calls you'll still get from us to tap the encyclopedic knowledge in your brain. So starting with Councilmember Thomas.
Well, I mean, first of all of your accomplishments and your resume, which you've done professionally, that matters. But you know, I'm a little old school, maybe not a little, right? When you talk about when you watch people who represent the future, you know, they talk about the best and the brightest and who's got what position. And as someone who likes, you know, my neighborhood I grew up in, I had to, you know, you learn to watch, you know, you pay attention to your surroundings, you pay attention to people. In watching you, and first of all, the union, I love it. As an old head, I love it when two good people get together, right? You and your wife represent the very best in humanity in terms of public service. But in watching you, you know, I could hear what other people say, but what people say is never more important than what you feel. And I think, you know, every now and then God gives us people who have the perfect blend of intellect and humanity, right? You know they're smart, but you know they give a damn. And people may have questioned your intellect or your IQ, depending on what the policy was or whether they disagree. But they can never ever question your humanity. And as someone who likes to watch young people and make sure we pave a way for them, you represent, I think, the very best. And I'm gonna shut up because I'm just gonna use a word my father and my uncles used to use to validate people. So if someone ever asks me about you in the future, all I'm gonna say is he's a good brother.
That Councilman Thomas, so serious. Great comments, but I heard JP Morrell say that we might use the word roast. So I wanted to start talking about you working with JP for a year and then going to work with the DA for a year. But no, Councilman Thomas, thank you for those comments. And I just want to say, it's a pleasure for me to see that we will still be working with you in some capacities, you know, with your work with the DA, but certainly to thank you for your public service and your continuing public service, moving from one realm of public service to another, committed to our city, as shown not only by the organizations with which you're involved, but also by the work that you've done over this past year. I want to thank you for being accessible to our staff. Just yesterday, we called on you to find out what Councilmember Morrell's position was on a particular issue, and you got back to us right away. But it was an example of something that's happened so often throughout this 1 year of working with you as a council member. This year has been extremely eye-opening for me in terms of what the council does. And I've been the head of economic development for the city. I never knew the council did all of the things that we did. But it's important to recognize that there are people like you who have allowed your experience to be of value to everyone else on the council level. So thank you for serving as chief of staff. And I got to say a little something funny. Thank you for working with Councilmember Morrell to address some of those issues that he might have brought before us, but for your input. Thank you. And also we also want you to let us know what is going on at that DA's office and how we can work more closely to make that DA's office even more successful. But I also need my staff to let me know whenever the DA calls, because I don't want any poaching of staff going on to the DA's office. So I need to know when that DA has called our office for any reason at all. No, you know that I'm just joking. It's just great to see that you're moving from public service to public service, continuing your service to our city, a city that has a lot of good going for it. And I think that the future is much better than some of the things that we've seen in the past. But call my office whenever we can help. We're available to you. Thank you, Keith.
Oh, wow. I mean, it's almost hard for me to put into words, Keith, just how much you have meant to the city council, how much you have meant to my staff, to me. You know, you are someone who, whether you're a council member, whether you're a member of the public, whether you're a staff member, you are kind to everyone. You treat everyone with respect. And you treat your work very seriously. And I have always very much appreciated how you are someone who tries to kind of find the peace in things, right? How do we get to that middle ground? How do we make things work? And I can tell you that my chief of staff, Andrew Tuazolo, is pretty devastated that you're leaving. The two of you all have worked so closely together on a variety of different things. And not only have you been so incredibly helpful to me and my office on legislative matters, but as I've been taking a look back at my presidency that lasted for several years, you have also been one of those key people that has helped my office lead this council through incredibly difficult situations, whether we were dealing with Hurricane Ida or whether we were dealing with COVID or whether we were dealing with the cyber attack, all of those different really critical moments, Keith, you stepped up and you were right there helping my office as the other chief of staff for the other at-large office. And I'll just never forget your dedication and your commitment to the city council. And I'm very sorry for us that we are losing you here because you've been such an asset, but I am very, very happy for you that you are moving to this new position, working for our district attorney. And I know that you won't be a stranger. I hope you're not a stranger because I'm going to need you with, my bad little brother over here. But I just hope that you're not a stranger and that you're here often, and that actually because of you being at the DA's office, we'll build an even stronger connection and relationship with working with the DA. Thank you.
Keith, I was a chief of staff, right? So I know what a chief of staff does. I know you are the driving force behind policy. You're the driving force of an office. You're the one who negotiates between offices, between people to get things done. So a chief of staff role is critical to making government function, to making this government function, especially during these times. But what I have to say is this: you have the capacity, and you've shown the capacity to control an office of Jason Smooth as Silk Williams and JP Burn It Down Morel. That's great. And do it in a way that is so successful, so professional, so calm. I don't know how you kept your calm between those two personalities, but you did. And that is the sign of a really successful chief of staff. Someone who not only controls the big personalities around them, but the person who really drives the smaller personalities and the voices that need to be elevated in a conversation. You might not be able to go to Jason, go to JP Burn It Down Morel and really elevate their voices so that they're heard. That's your role as the chief of staff, and that's critical to the functioning of government and to the society. And so I just want to say thank you. Thank you for helping my staff, helping me navigate my first year as a city council person, coming from a chief of staff role. And I just know how successful you're going to be, not only in this next position, but in life and whatever you do in the future. Thank you so much.
Keith, I just want to start by saying thank you selfishly from saving us from JP's ideas. I'm sure there's many things that didn't even come to us. And JP may think this is a roast of you, but really it's turned into one of him, which we're all happy to support. I guess I think about it this way. A couple of things, like I'm now entering year 5, and you've been here this whole time. Andrew, Sadie, Sheree, Amanda, Nina, and a couple of things. I've heard the words public service a couple of times. So whether you're working with Jason or Donna or JP, you have been the epitome of public service in everything that you've done. Not just in your thoughtful approach, which is obviously incredibly important, but your deep well of knowledge, and I think probably as Helena said, like your very steady hand doing things. I think also what I appreciate too is nothing is too big or too small. And there's a lot of times I don't think people realize, while things may look fine, we're kind of like a duck. It may look fine on the surface, but everything's going like this underneath. And you have been magnificent at this proclamation needs to be signed at a park at Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning, to drafting significant legislation, to dealing with constituents and resident issues, and all the while, I think, being completely unselfish with your institutional knowledge that is so important to council members and to staff. And that's what I'm gonna miss the most. I think a lot of times, particularly as it becomes easy for us as people to feel like we're more in tribes, and also for the narrative to be about how separated we are, and how easy it is to be like this group or that group is fighting, that you've just been a consummate professional and a friend. And except for your one major wart of being a Dallas Cowboys fan,
We got the series over my 7 years.
and I'm sure we'll blow it in the playoffs quickly enough. I look forward to your very bright future, and know that this groundwork that you've laid is going to take you very far, because there's not a lot of people who are really good at the personal side of things, the professional side of things, the knowledge side, and you have one person who can encapsulate all of that. Says a tremendous amount about who you are.
Madam Clerk.
Hey, friend. I'm so proud of you, Keith. Words cannot say how I really feel about you. You were patient, understanding, and even when things didn't seem right, you and I always were able to talk about things and we could discuss it. And I have watched you grow from the first time you came here with Councilmember Williams. And I've seen you grow with Councilmember Morrell. And the one thing that I'll tell you is keep your faith in God. Always put him first and go to him with whatever is going on, and he's going to work it out for you. And know that if you need a prayer, you can always call me and we'll pray together. So the best of luck to you with the DA, and the best of luck for you in your marriage. I love you.
Councilman King.
Congratulations, Keith, on your new job and your next step. I'm last, so I'll be short. I remember when you first came to the public defender's office, like 2010, 2012, about that. That's when we first met. People thought we were the same person. They thought we were related in the courthouse, similar build and hairstyle, but I think I look a little bit better. But man, I think you're gonna do great in your next step with the DA's office, and good luck to you and family, and God bless.
Mr. DA. And after Mr. DA, Mr. Burns, I'd like to make some comments for you. Keith.
Well, that
Mr. DA.
speaks volumes that Mr. Burnstine wants to make comments because he knows Keith and Keith knows him. And that really speaks to the person that he is. I mean, being a city council member in the city of New Orleans is not like being a city council member anywhere else in the country. It's difficult. If you're at Walmart, if you are at the park, everyone needs 10 minutes to an hour for just one or two things. And I know just how tough you all's jobs are, but no legislation gets written. Nothing gets approved or built without the people behind you all and the people on your left and your right. And Keith's erudite humbleness, his work ethic in terms of having read everything that was available before a meeting, not before a vote, before a meeting with the people to talk about the stuff. I can't say enough about it. He worked every single job in my council office, from front desk, legislative assistant to chief of staff, And I know that he felt that job was not a job for one person. He thought it was really important to build relationships across councilmanic districts in every branch of government, whether it be judicial, whether it be that executive branch over there. Keith was always willing to go that extra mile to get it done. And it's so great to be able to hear that you all see him the way I see him. You know, he knows that leadership is not a cult of personality. He was committed to this council when I left, to make sure that things that we had planned kept going, and to make sure that you all had whatever insight, information you all needed, from Donna to you, JP. And, you know, it really speaks to the best of New Orleans. Although he has come from the Mississippi Delta to the halls of City Hall, Keith represents what's best about leadership. And that's just pure public service and sacrifice. And I thank you all for letting him go. And please know that you will see a lot of him, and you will hear a lot about what he's doing for the city. We are in a crisis. I hear you all talk about it on a regular basis. And it is absolutely a group lift from the criminal court building to City Hall to every agency in this city that's trying to make it stronger. And the fact that Keith believes that it's important for staff members and team members of other electeds and leaders to work collaboratively together, that's what's going to pull the city out of it. So I thank you all for honoring his service to this city today, and honoring he and his wife's commitment to the people of this city. Love you, Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside.
Hello, Keith. Hello, wife of Keith. My name is Michael Burnside. I live at 2215 Felicity. Forget all that stuff. Keith is kind. He's kind to me. There aren't very many people who are kind to me. He talks with me. Not very many people talk with me. They talk to me. There's a subtle difference. It matters in the long run. He certainly is kind, respectful, and serious, but he's a lot more. He's a lot more than just a functioning chief of staff. He has easily the potential to sit where you sit, if he wanted to, and if we wanted him to. I don't know that those two wants will line up. Particularly, we have to take into account his wife's wants as well. He's lucky to have a wife. I envy the clerk. She said something I'm not quite able to say, but if I were a little stronger, I could. I wish I could in truth say that I loved Keith, but my heart is small. He deserves all the love that we can give him. He certainly loves us. When I was young, I had a mystical experience, and one of my 5 witnesses is God wants humans to grow. And I am so glad to hear that Keith has grown, and I hope he continues to grow, because we're going to need his leadership in the future. Thank you very much.
All right, Keith, I'm gonna let you go before I go so you can get it out. Come on.
I'm happy Ada's here because she always reminds me not to just go off rambling, telling the story of my life anytime I get an audience. I started to try to make a list of people that I needed to thank from the 7 years of having the pleasure to work with the council. I don't know how I would have made it a day without the relationships that I was able to form. It's not lost on me that, you know, typically when we've got this forum and we've got people sitting at this table, there's people who have far exceeded anything I've ever could have done in my service. You know, we usually honor giants at this table, and the fact that you guys thought enough of me to take a moment to send me off. I'm having emotions I've never had before, and I really appreciate that. I tried to make some notes so I'm not a rambling, crying mess. thanks so much to each of you, council members, for the difficult job that you all took on. This is a crazy building a lot of times, and the issues are varied and scattered and complicated. And there's a lot of gray area. And the example that you guys have set for us as staffers, for the city, and that you continue to wake up and take on every day is nothing short of amazing. It's a minor miracle every time. And I thank you guys for doing that job in the face of all odds. So thank you so much. It means the world to me to have you guys say nice things about me. I think we'll replay this for my eulogy. I'm absolutely full, from what you guys have done. I promised myself that, whenever anybody thought so much of me to acknowledge me, that I would make sure to acknowledge my mother, Geraldine. Thank you, Mama. She's the reason I'm here. She's the reason my heart beats. She, is my everything. I've learned more than I've ever could have imagined just over this job. I've gained perspective that I don't know how else I would have gotten it. Like Jason said, whenever he thought so much of me to bring me over, I started as a legislative assistant and worked every job in the council office. So I've had the distinct pleasure of talking to more constituents and more people and more, getting involved in more meetings and organizations than I've ever could have imagined. And I'm just so grateful for that opportunity. JP, man, whenever I've watched you forever, as you know, everybody who I've got connections with, you are a legislative hero. You've done so many great things for us at the state level. And it was the greatest pleasure whenever you reached out and said, hey man, what do you think about giving it another go? And you told me straight up, hey man, it's not gonna always be comfortable. You're gonna be in some fights, do you accept this challenge? People say things, right? Truer words have never been spoken, man. And I thank you for thinking so much of me to bring me in and surrounding me with the best crew that I could have hoped for. I see Big Chief Crystal back there. Crystal, I got the greatest confidence in your ability to do this job. When you talk about somebody who's kind and, who sets a tone every day, who cares about people, make sure that if you got the sniffles, you've got what you need, and make sure you're taking care of your business. You couldn't ask for a better replacement, or a better person to step up and take care. And Crystal's a secret JP whisperer, guys. So that's what you really need. James, Monet, I appreciate y'all. I appreciate you. I will say this a million times that, I don't know, man, the environment, the camaraderie, Mace, here somewhere, that y'all created made this job easy. It made it fun. It made it not feel like a job many days. And, James would give us a nice comic view, strong 5 minutes every day to make sure that spirits were good. And I'm so thankful for that. Helena, you said it, we have, in the past council and this one, we've been in some battles and we've always had to support one another. Your staff, Andrew, my man, Sadie, Sheree, Just Said, Malvo, y'all have been an extension of our office. We're kind of like one big office some days. And, just without that support, this wouldn't have been the experience that it's been. I would be remiss if I didn't shout out our new Madam Clerk, Donna Glapion, who also, like yourself, JP, thought so much of me that, she would allow me to get in the trenches with her. We were both entering a brave new world. That was my only, Jason had been the only experience I'd ever had. And that was my, carbon, that was the print. That was the, what a politician looked like. And she did it in a different way. And it was from such a place of, we knew it was a short time, and it was just from such a place of love and service, where she found a way to be on the ground in the community almost every day. You know, what can we give away? What does the city have that we can pass out to people just to make the day better for them? And I'm so grateful for that experience. You know, when I think about the type of spirit, I think about the contentious environment that we work in, the adversarial system that we're a part of. You know, you really need to remain humble. You really need to keep a steady head. And, you know, you have to have some divine intervention a lot of times. And there are two folks who I found here who I just don't know. I don't know what this job would have been if it weren't for the steady hands of Miss Laura and Miss Lena. Miss Laura, you have been my therapist, my chaplain. You've been a teacher, and you know, you got my mind right a lot of times, and I'm so thankful for that. The crew that you have put around yourself, like all of the women and men that make up the clerk's office, have been so good to me, have always been a reflection of that spirit that you have, that godliness that you have. And you have always, you know, when you get to the point where you need a sanity check, I think we all get there at some point. Right before I got to that ledge, you'd always have that spidey sense to smell it before I could even say it or really even feel it. And you know, JP, whenever we finally made the decision that I was gonna transition to the DA's office and join my good friend, I spoke to Madam Clerk first. I was shaking, man, because it felt so conflicting to have the opportunity to work with somebody I have such regard and respect for, and you know, a job that I would love, you know, to do 7 days a week for the rest of my life. And I told her, and you know, the day we spoke, she just kind of felt it in this room. Meeting was going on, and she just grabbed me and said, "Hey, pray with me." And you know, we did that, and that was a tremendous weight lifted, and assured me that not only was our communication going to be great, but that the path forward was going to be wonderful. Ms. Laura, I love you. I appreciate you. I can't say it enough. I'll try to say it every day, but I thank you so much. Miss Lena, I don't see Miss Lena in here, but
She's listening and watching.
oh man.
And she's
Man.
been around longer than you.
Man, maybe longer than I've been alive.
And all of us.
You know, and what do I say? Like, you talk about a beautiful spirit. Council member, you said it. She's been here longer than all of us, but she still runs laps around all of us when it comes to knowing the pulse of the city, serving people, making sure that staffers have what they need. And she's also, you know, a straight shooter. We've all gotten a Miss Lena check-in every now and then to make sure that we're doing what we need to do, and we're doing that in the proper order. What she's done with breast cancer awareness, which has really become cancer awareness, because we talk about not just breast cancer, but so many other different forms, is nothing short of amazing. Where she's invited the entire city to be involved in a public conversation to remove a stigma of this illness and to talk about what a solution looks like. You know, we're going to look back in history, and Ms. Lena will have saved lives, much like the medical professionals that we know, because of the screenings that she set up, because she made people so comfortable about talking about their condition, and we created a celebration around it. You know, I don't know how many people have that innate ability to you know, conceive something like that and execute it. But you know, she is an angel among us, and you know, maybe if I ever have an opportunity to come back, I feel like I'll find Miss Lena here, because I don't know that this building stands without her. You know, I will say that I found my wife in this building. So if that's the only thing that ever happened, you know, the building owes me nothing, right? It owes me absolutely nothing. Adon, I love you. I appreciate you. You have felt all of the pain points of this gig with me, and I can't say thank you enough. I love you. I appreciate you. Jason Williams, man, when I saw Jason and Watch walk in, I was like, all right, something's up. Yeah, something's up. I don't know how Jason knew my name and who I was and how I got the call, how I ended up being so blessed to be brought into this space that I knew very little about. But that moment truly changed the trajectory of my life. I knew that I would somehow be involved in doing some criminal defense work forever, but I didn't know that this is what I needed. This is what I really wanted to do, that I really wanted to be working on that policy side, and that this is a necessary component in, you know, what's become my comprehensive doctrine and what helps me to serve people. I'm so excited about the opportunity to go and get back in the trenches with the DA, who's a great man, a good man, who recalibrated my thought about really what a politician was, who served every day, who both put up the style points, as you said, silky smooth Williams, and also did the hard work. Jason, I love you. I appreciate you. Brother Wash, you have also, my first day on the job, Washington walked in and said, "We hired you." You know? Like, man, I thought we were gonna have somebody else. And he's a lifelong friend from that day. I was like, thank you. But yes, you stuck with me. Man, thank all of you. I see everybody's faces. Calvin, I see you, man. Calvin's been one of those people. There's just so many people in this role who have just propped me up. I'm gonna shut up. But so many people who have just helped me, and this feels like a eulogy for real. But you know, I'm a young man. I might find myself back on this side at some point. But I appreciate y'all. Miss Sharon set the mold for what a going away looks like, so I won't try to second line out of here. But you know, I will stop there and say just thank you guys. I appreciate how all of you have enriched my life. Oliver, I have to say, like, you've taken every moment to come into my office and talk or catch me and give me an encouraging word, and that means a lot to me. I'm gonna keep saying thank you as if the mic stays on, so let me stop. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. I look forward to continuing to work with everybody. Thank you.
It's a celebration.
One final word before we second line you out of here. I'm just kidding. I knew when I met Keith, when I was starting my office, the most important thing in my life and defines everything I do is my role as a husband and a parent. And I can tell you from the moment I met Keith, his number one role is being a father and being a husband. And I think that if more people who are in politics in particular would focus on being a good person, being a good husband, and being a good father, if that was their priority, everything else would fall into place. I do not know. It's so interesting because today we've got a light chamber. Keith, I really feel like there's a whole bunch of people who come here a lot that don't know you're not going to be here next meeting, and they're going to be real lost. You might have a second eulogy because they might all call up and say, I wasn't here. Kim and Nooney and the rest of them, maybe, but I wasn't here to give my, I want to go on record. But honestly, there was a moment I had my birthday party last year, and Keith showed up to my birthday party with comic books. And I was like, okay, I see you. You think you know me. And he pulled it out, and it literally was all of the actual comic books I collected and all the missing issues. And he does those. I went to my comic book shop, and they said they had this handsome gentleman walk in, lost as hell, wandering in a circle. And he finds one up and said, "Do y'all know my boss?" And he pulled my folder and got all the right comic books. And I say that because it is hard for me to think of a more considerate and empathic individual than Keith Lampkin. And it has been my distinct pleasure to work with you. I do think that many members have said it's going to be a brave new world without you being here, because it's going to be different. But realize many of us appreciate you. We love you. And if not me, I'm sure Andrew will call you on a daily basis. So thank you so much, Keith.
Thank
We
you guys so
appreciate you. We
much.
love you.
Thank
Come on out, Dad. Come on, Jason.
I'm super excited for him. Yeah, right.
Council members, are we ready?
Yes, Madam Clerk, we are ready to begin.
Roll call, Councilmember Thomas, Councilmember Green,
Present.
Councilmember Morrell, Councilmember Moreno, Councilmember King, Councilmember Harris,
Here.
Councilmember Jeruso. We have 7 members. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Pastor Bhutan, you can come on up for our invocation. Everyone, please stand.
Amen. Let's bow our heads for a moment of prayer. Gracious God, our Father, we honor you. We thank you. We adore you. We thank you for the gift of life and giving us another day to get it right. God, we pray now that your presence will be in this place, in this meeting, God. We pray for all of our council people, Father God, and all of our constituents that are here. God, as we come together to do the work to make this city great, just be with us. We need your peace. We need your protection. We need your strength. We need your wisdom, and we need your guidance. And we know you'll give it to us today. We ask all these blessings in your name we pray. Amen.
I'll lead the pledge.
Of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets
Council members, we're now going to page 32. And we're going to take up motion M23-2 by council members Moreno, Morrell, Jeruso, Harris, King, Green, and Thomas. Electing council member at large Division 2, JP Morrell, to serve as president, and council member at large Division 1, Helena Moreno, to serve as vice president of the council for the term January 5th, 2023 through the first city council meeting in 2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, so this is what is supposed to traditionally happen with the city council is the at-large members alternate every year who's going to be president, and that's in our council rules. It's rule number 8. Now, what's interesting is due to a variety of different circumstances, I've actually been president for many consecutive years. I was president in 2019, and then Councilmember Williams was elected to be district attorney in 2020. So then I had to serve his term. And then I took my term in 2021. And then I, as being the more senior at large member, I took the term in 2022. So we've just learned that that makes me the longest serving council member when we talk about consecutive years as president. And so, wow. And what years they've been. We've dealt with a variety of different circumstances, going back to the collapse of the Hard Rock Hotel, going back to dealing with the cyber attack, of course, the COVID emergencies, and figuring out, how we were going to take this city council that's always been a council that met openly in public, and then shutting it down and meeting openly online, to then, of course, Hurricane Ida, and really leading on figuring out, how do we get the resources out to the public, and then turning this council chamber into what became a shelter, really, for our essential personnel here at City Hall. So much has happened, and I'm certainly proud of the legislative accomplishments that I've pushed through as council president. But mostly, I want to say this, and obviously we talked about Keith already, but I'm really proud of the staff, of the council staff. I'm really proud of our central staff, of the clerk's office, of my staff, at the staffers who work for all of the different council offices, because so many of you all helped me over these years through these very difficult emergencies, really. Critical issues that impacted the council. Madam Clerk, I couldn't have done it without you. I couldn't have done it without Paul Harang, Adam Swensick. Thank you so much with all of the legal hurdles that we had to deal with during COVID as we shut down our meetings. Of course, my chief of staff, Sadie, Josette, Sheree, and Greg Malvo in my office. I've learned a lot from both councils that I served as president under, the previous council and this council, of course. And I'll say this, I think what is really clear is that it is in the council's independence that we really can effectively do our job. It is because of our independence that we can act objectively. It is because of our independence that we can ensure accountability and proper oversight. And I had really hoped to get an independent council to ensure what I just talked about, accountability and proper oversight. And I have to tell you that in this council, that is exactly what we have. While we are, of course, the legislative branch, we're not the operators of the city. We're not the implementers of policies in the city. We are the executive branch. So that means that we must continue to push to make valuable and impactful changes for the city of New Orleans. We have to push to make our city safer. I mean, I'll say this, I'll speak truth here. I mean, I believe that we're actually in a state of emergency when it comes to the violence in our city. I believe that there should be a declared state of emergency based on the number of shootings that are happening in our city right now, based on the fact that I still do not see a murder reduction plan coming out of City Hall and being implemented. We are in a state of emergency. We have to continue to push to ensure that the quality of life for people in the city improves. We have to continue to push that New Orleans becomes a place where it is much easier for us to live, to work, to raise our families. So I'll be brief here because I could speak for a while on what the past several years have been like as president, but I'll just say this, when it comes to this council, I want to say that I'm incredibly proud to have been your president in our first year. We have accomplished a lot, and I look forward to working hand in hand with my friend and colleague, Councilmember Morrell, as he takes over as president. As Keith so eloquently spoke earlier, at the end of the day, when it comes to the at-large offices, we really are just one big, large office where we work hand in hand together. So with that, Councilmember Morrell, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I think before you do that, Madam President, respectfully, I think the most important thing we can do is thank you for your term. The public policy part of it, in many cases, and I have a little experience with it, is a lot easier than the politics of the people. And to do it with grace, to do it with, and I think you go overboard trying to be fair. There are rules that govern this body. There's rules that govern the decorum. And as someone who has seen it over quite a few decades, the one thing that you've done is you've tried to give the public their voice. Many times that voice can be disruptive. Many times it can even be disrespectful. But the least you've done is try to make sure that this political body hears people, and that's not easy to do. So as someone who has watched it over the years, and as someone who sits here and works with you now, know that your toil, your effort, and your patience, even though we don't always agree on, and it's not that often that we don't, but know that it as an observer, as someone who watched you do that with the grace, I think, and the patience that this time required. So appreciate you.
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Green.
Our new vice president, but also our outgoing president, Moreno, I just want to thank you for your work during this first year of my serving on this city council. The meetings that we've had, the times that you called into our office or stopped into my office or called me to come into your office have been meaningful and appreciated. It's important for me to just say that as a city, we do certainly have our challenges out there, but as someone who has raised 3 children in our city who are college graduates and successes, I just do what I can to see the positive. And I know that you are serving in this position because you're interested in seeing the positive in our city and seeing our city get better. And there are some things that let me feel that it is going to get better. But I'm just pleased to have during this first year, a year of challenges, a year where we didn't have an inauguration as a council because of COVID and things like that. You know, you continue to work with us all to, keep the agendas flowing and to keep us motivated to do those things that are in the best interest of the city. So thank you for your many years of service as president, and look forward to continuing to work with you, of course, as in your service as vice president, and also with Councilmember Morrell as he comes in at this time. This is a smooth and a very appreciated transition, the way it happened in democracy, and our citizens should see this as an example of the order in the council and the things that are important to our citizens, that we just continue our work now with different leadership, but the most important thing is our work continues. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you. I think I would be remiss to not begin by saying how grateful I am for this past year, having the ability to watch the council president and my dear friend Helena Moreno really show me the ropes of what the presidency means. She is the longest serving consecutive president of the city council. And our relationship goes back over a decade to our time serving together in the Louisiana legislature. And in that time in the legislature, she was a bastion of reason in a body that was often unreasonable. I can say with all surety, she had the unique ability in the legislature to tackle very controversial issues. Particularly, we worked very closely on domestic violence and sexual assault. And though these should not be combative issues, she not only had the ability to be successful in the legislature over issues, particularly issues where the NRA was involved, by being someone who could work with very disparate groups of people to get collaborative consensus to move the ball forward. In my time as a senator and as a citizen and as a council member, and she was the president during all 3 of those periods, she showed that same level of grace and collaborative spirit through all of the crises she mentioned. Because to be clear, other than Hurricane Katrina, which is the definitive crisis of our time, this city has faced a slew of sequential crises, and we are currently in a crisis of crime. And she has had unwavering and firm leadership during that period. Her office has been, and I'm sure will continue to be, a resource for my office, as her veteran staffers, especially with my chief of staff leaving, Mr. Lampkin, will continue to be a resource to help my office transition into this leadership position. So thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for in advance for the sheer amount of calls you'll get from me over policy issues I don't understand over the course of my term as president. As far as being president, I honestly don't think it really hit me until this morning. I was dropping off my daughter at school and she got out the car and said, "See you later, El Presidente." And I looked at her, I was like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "You're the president today." And I said, "Oh, you're right." And I guess because our offices work so closely together, I don't really see this as a definitive stop and a start to how the council will be operated. This council over the last year has shown it is an independent council that is truly seeking to restore a balance and parity between the executive and legislative branches of government. That has not been without conflict, but to be clear, this council does not seek conflict. It simply does not waver from conflict. And I think for the public perspective, from what I've seen in my year here as vice president, that is the leadership the people of the city of New Orleans want. They want a council that is independent of the other branches of government, a council that pushes the envelope on what councils have done in the past, and to be frank and candid, a council that promotes transparency and accountability above all else. And I can say in our year here, I've been very proud to see this council truly push the envelope on what the council can do and continue to push the envelope on what this council will do. I think it's important to note that under this council, for the first time in history, there will be a confirmation process for the incoming chief of police. I think it's important to underline and highlight that as a measure. We as a council had debate, had transparent arguments, and we put on the ballot for the people to consider empowering this council to have confirmation of mayoral appointees. I think what you saw from that vote that happened last fall is that the public has been waiting for the council to rise to the challenge of being a co-equal branch of government. And the public rewarded that and gave us that authority last fall. I look forward, both as the president and as the chair of governmental affairs, to having those public meetings regarding the confirmation of the next police chief, because to the council president's point, there is a crisis in the city. It is a crisis that has been ongoing for several years, but has gotten to the point where we as elected officials in the public cannot ignore it. I'm also very proud of this council, in particular, our leadership from our budget chair, Councilmember Geruso, in that when given a budget last year, we did not rubber stamp a budget, we changed the budget substantially. We changed the budget in ways to reflect council priorities. In particular, when we did not believe that there were sufficient resources going to those measures that prevent crime versus simply funding measures to respond to it, this council doubled the funding for NORD, and this council created additional opportunities for those programs that intervene with our youth before they become people who are interacting with our police department after the fact. I'm also very proud, contrary to public belief, that this council has shown it is not a monolith. The fact that we have had robust debate over controversial issues. I want to highlight the fact that we had robust, difficult debate over issues like facial recognition, where council members had very dramatic differences of opinion, and through public debate and public discourse on that issue, the council was forced to compromise on what the ultimate legislation was. That's important. It's important that we have a public debate and council members can say publicly what their positions are, and we as a body have that debate in a forum where the public can review it. And I do not doubt over this next year, we will have more public debate over controversial issues. I think of this council has shown the days of there being a plethora of legislative issues with unanimous approval with no discussion are gone. As far as my term as president, I'll be very short. I believe an independent council is crucial to the future of the city of New Orleans. I believe a council that stands separately from every other branch is essential to the future of the city of New Orleans. And as your president, I will continue to push the envelope on what this council can and should do to assure the people of the city of New Orleans get the return for the tremendous investment of taxes, fees, and fines we put upon them. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate all the work everyone's done, and please have patience with me as the clerk teaches me all the various rules and things I have to know to be president. Thank you.
All right, I have one speaker card. Is it Michael? Is it yours? Okay, come on up, Michael. Good morning.
I'm going to take this moment to just do something strange, which is to say thank you. The council president herself has come to my home, and she certainly has allowed her staff to engage with me at length, particularly with regards to utility issues, specifically utility poles in my neighborhood, which I'm very grateful. So thank you, Council President, very much. Naturally, you'll still be here, and being a vice president or whatever is not without its own power, but still I want to take a moment to say thank you. I don't know JP Morrell very well at all. I know his reputation fairly well. He brought to us, dare I say, at the expense of his many allies, the opportunity to be normal, specifically to have a jury that has to be unanimous when they send us off to jail for the rest of our lives. So I have to say, not being a Louisianan and not being here during Katrina, moving here afterwards, the 10-2 struck me as a very strange legal reality. And it's quite frankly good to see that it has changed. So we have leadership at both ends of the change spectrum, and look forward to a future that brings more people into this room, because I was taught as a young man that democracy was good. I was taught as a young man that you went into the military to defend it. And being a young and foolish man, I believed many things I was told when I was young, and joined the U.S. Army for 4 years to fight godless communism and to prevent its overtaking the free world. It's hard to give up the beliefs of one's childhood. So the idea of a government that is more than just a judiciary, the idea of a government that's more than just administrative, the idea that has a government that has a house of the people where you're supposed to be able to come in and harass the living shit out of a poor person who's volunteered to be a servant, is important, not just for the letting go of emotional anger. It is important as a feedback loop. The problem with hierarchy is that the person at the top very rarely has any personal contact with the person at the bottom. The person at the top really rarely ever sleeps on a street with a homeless person for even one night, much less for 40. The key to Christianity was not that Christ was powerful. All pagan gods were powerful. The idea of Christianity was that he's the least of us, right? All of our shit gets dumped on his shoulders. It's a very strange God. And democracy is a very strange government. It says the people at the bottom matter, and for more than just their votes. The legitimacy of the entire government comes from the willingness of the poor people, the little people, and the weak people to accept the dictates they might otherwise not accept, in the belief that they had some chance to ameliorate them, change them, negotiate them, and otherwise make them semi-palatable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside. Mr. Larry Morgan, come on up. Good morning.
Good morning to the council and everybody in the house. I would like to express the past, what I had experienced coming through this council chamber. There are two that is sitting in these chairs right now that has given me a lot of experience what government was all about. And what I have learned from them, they wasn't afraid to come to the front line no matter what powerful industry was in the house. And that told me they wasn't on the tape or they wasn't afraid to represent the people. And I'm speaking about Miss Morano. She was led the charge, and Councilman Joe DeRusso. They are the two that I spoke to you new councils, that they are the foundation of knowledge that what goes on in this city. And they are the ones that challenge the organizations and the different companies that come through here running games on the people. If you want to be successful in life where people will talk about your name, who you was in the future, how great you was, you go it on and join them and strengthen the link of justice. They are the link of justice. You have a good mystery, a council that is in the council equation now. Use it. And you're only powerful if you keep that chain linked together. And you only will get something done if you keep that chain linked together. And God has blessed you. And I say to you, every scenario that I had addressed it, and many people say, why you go there? Why you go there? And I tell them, it took time, maybe time to analyze of what I was addressing to the council, but they became a reality and the people are benefiting from it. I said to your councilman, you're in my prayers, and Councilman Helen Morano and Councilman Joe, thank you for your service. I'm sorry to see that the time will come when all of our positions will be eliminated, but you have the opportunity to teach all the ones to come, and you all will be the teachers when they leave. You, Green, you will be the teacher. Troy, you will be the teacher. Every last one of y'all. You will be the teacher to bring these councils in the future to the city that the people need to have represent them. Thank you for your gratitude and thank you for your time.
Thank
And
you so
Happy
much.
New Year to all y'all. May God bless you and your family and everybody in the house.
And Happy New Year to you as well. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. All right, any, no other additional public comments? Great. Well, it's been moved and seconded, moved by Councilmember Green, seconded by Councilmember Jeruso. Okay, we'll do it again. It's been moved. There we go. 7 yeas, no nays. Mr. President, I turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I believe, Madam Clerk, you want to finish page 32?
Yes, I do, sir. At the top of the page, Resolution R 23-1 by Councilmember Harris. A resolution calling an election in the Twin Brook Security District for Saturday, April 29th, 2023.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This does exactly what you said. It calls for an election on April 29th, 2023 for the Twin Brook Security District. Is there any public comment or online comment?
No.
All right, I will move. I need a second. Seconded by Councilmember Jeruso. Okay, I'll move again. 7 yeas, thank you.
At the bottom of the page, we have motion M 23-4 by council members Jeruso, Morel, Moreno, Harris, King, Green, and Thomas, requesting and authorizing the president of the council to sign an amendment to the professional services agreement between the city of New Orleans and Barrasso, Usden, Cooperman, Freeman and Savard LLC, authorizing up to $250,000 in compensation during the original term, an identical amount in any allowable renewable term, and containing such other provisions as may be necessary or desirable to accomplish the purposes of this motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members, I know this is a unanimous filing, but remember, this is a result of the Wisner litigation. We are seeking to ensure that our lawyers are properly funded. Part of the issue already has been that the heirs keep on challenging rulings that they have lost. So we prevailed in the district court, Fourth Circuit, Supreme Court, and now we have to move on to the very next part of this, which is a legal determination that that the trust has expired. So I would expect that not only will we see this, but also an additional ask of the law firm as more work continues. So I'll move for approval. Second, do we have any online comments, Ms. Kern? None. Second by Council President. Six yeas, no nays. Thank you.
We're now going to the regular order of the agenda, page 2. We have the approval of the minutes, December 1st, 2022 and December 15th, 2022.
I'll move for the approval of the minutes. Can I get a second? Second by Councilmember King, please vote your machines. Five yeas, no nays. The minutes are approved. Next order.
We're now on top of page 3, the consent agenda. We have a communication from Aaron Spears, Chief of Staff and Counsel Utilities Regulatory Office. This should be marked received. We're on page 4, a communication from Howard L. Rogers III, 9119 Forsyth Street. This should be marked received. Suggested hearing date is January 19th. We have a communication from Carly Hardy, 2219 Dauphine Street. This should be marked received. Suggested hearing date, January 19th. On top of page 5, we have a communication from Amy B. Trepanier, Director of Personnel, City of New Orleans, Department of Civil Service. Amendment to the classified pay plan, Sewage and Water Board, Public Works. This should be marked receive and referred to the Budget Committee. On top of page 6, we have a communication from Amy B. Trepanier, Director of Personnel, City of New Orleans, Department of Civil Service. Amendments to the classified pay plan, Police. This should be marked receive and referred to the Budget Committee. On top of page 7, we have a communication from Amy B. Trepanier, Director of Personnel, City of New Orleans, Department of Civil Service, an amendment to the classified pay plan, Sewage and Water Board. This should be marked receive and referred to the Budget Committee. We have a communication from Christina Carroll, City of New Orleans Civil Service Commission. This should be marked received. On top of page 8, we have a communication from Tracy D. Madison, Secretary, Board of Liquidation, City Debt. This should be marked received. We have a communication from Mary Grace Burgess, 740 Jenner Street. This should be marked received. Suggested hearing date, January 19th. We have a communication from Angela Gilbert Sarker, Alcoholic Beverage Control Board Clerk. This should be marked received. We're on top of page 9. We have a report of Stella Sisman, Independent Police Monitor, Office of the Independent Police Monitor. This should be marked received. We have a report of Michelle N. Thompson, Business Manager, New Orleans Public Library. This should be marked received. We have a report of the Deputy Director of the New Orleans Historic District Landmarks Commission, Central Business District, Historic District Landmarks Commission, 740 Jenner Street. This should be marked received. We're on top of page 10. We have the report of the Deputy Director of the New Orleans Historic District Landmark Commission, Central Business District, Historic District Landmarks Commission, 2219 Dauphine Street. We have the report of the Executive Director of the City Planning Commission. This should be marked received. Suggested hearing date, January 19th. We have the report of the Executive Director of the City Planning Commission, 40 English Turn Parkway, Design Review 5422. This should be marked received. Suggested hearing date, January 19th. We're on page 11. We have ordinance calendar number 33,976 by Councilmember Harris, zoning docket 6322. We have ordinance calendar number 33,977. This ordinance is being removed from the consent agenda because it has an amendments and it will come up at noon. We have on page 12, ordinance calendar number 33,978 by Councilmember Thomas, municipal address 5201 North Claiborne Avenue, zoning docket 7422. We have ordinance calendar number 33,980 by Councilmember Jeruso. Municipal address is 65 Fountain Blue Drive, 2624 Pine Street, and 2700 Lower Line Street. Zoning docket 7622. On top of page 13, we have ordinance calendar number 33,981 by Councilmember Harris, 610 through 616 Barone Street, zoning docket 8022. We have ordinance calendar number 33,984 by Councilmember Harris, 901 through 903 Louisiana Avenue, zoning docket 7522. Page 14, ordinance calendar number 33,987 by Councilmember Harris, municipal address 3511 Magazine Street, zoning docket 7022. We have ordinance calendar number 33,988 by Councilmember King, 2121 through 2127 Charter Street and 616 Elysian Fields Avenue, zoning docket 7222. On top of page 15, we have ordinance calendar number 33,989 by Councilmember King. Municipal address is 1601 Elizardi Boulevard, zoning docket 7822. We have ordinance calendar number 33,990 by Councilmember King, 2438 through 2440 Charter Street, zoning docket 7922. Those are all the matters on the consent agenda.
Mr. Burnside, you'd like to comment?
Michael Burnside, 2215 Felicity, regarding number 1, which is a communication from Aaron Spears. It says a communication for electric and gas utilities. I have a problem with AT&T, and AT&T is not an electric or gas utility, but both the president and the vice president took me to task back in the day when I was talking about Jonathan Rhodes and informed me that the Curo is the people that do AT&T. Sent an email maybe a month ago or whatever. There's a pole laying down on 1600 block of Clare that hasn't been picked up in over 30 days easily, maybe 60. There's a rotten pole, completely rotten, only being held up by its electric wires at the corner. Try to get this right, Michael. St. Andrew and South Robertson. And then there is a pole with a completely rotten base. You can stick your whole hand in there. Opposite 25, no, try to get this right. Also 2025 South Liberty, working from memory. Should have wrote some notes. But the bottom line is I've been in communication with AT&T and Entergy for a long time now, meaning years, multiple years. Entergy's been responsive if you give them enough time. Sometimes time is really long, but they are responsive. AT&T used to be responsive, but as time has rolled on, they've become less and less responsive. I hope to be able to talk to each one of your offices at some point. I've sent a couple of you emails. Would like to talk to some of your staffers about trying to figure out ways to get Curo linked up with 311 and also possibly hire a pole inspector or do something more aligns with code enforcement where we can find utilities that leave trash in our neighborhoods, because poles that are completely rotten down are just waiting for the next hurricane to fall down. And that's not really what we call infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Green.
Mr. Chair, I just have a comment, and it's to the public. In this consent agenda, very quietly, the council just submitted to our budget committee 16 good-paying jobs in the city of New Orleans, including forensic examiner and also project managers. If you don't have the qualifications at this time, recognize in the city of New Orleans that you can get those qualifications through the great universities that we have, many of which offer training in forensics. I just want to encourage our citizens as I start off this new year with the same chant. I want to see all these jobs filled by New Orleanians, and I want us to get the qualifications that we need using the great universities and high schools that we have here in the city of New Orleans. So as you see these opportunities come available during the year, please recognize that sometimes these jobs don't get filled immediately, but that there's always an opportunity to get the training and the professional background that is necessary to have our local citizens fill these jobs. So please follow the budget committee this year and also the Civil Service Commission, because we're going to be granting a lot of changes that are going to make jobs even more appealing than they are now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. With that, I will move to adopt the consent agenda. Can I get a second? Second by Councilmember Harris. Please vote your machines.
We have 6 yeas. We're now on top of page 16. The VCC appeal of Ralph H. Long has been deferred to January 19th. On top of page 17. All matters, the legislative grouping, the extension request for 500 Piety Street and motion M23-3 has been deferred to January 19th. On top of page 18. Zoning docket 9022 has been deferred to January 19th. On page 19, a legislative grouping, zoning docket 9122. How do you pronounce that, Councilmember King? On page 19, your zoning docket. How you pronounce that, Stephen?
Obehi.
Who? Kabehi? Okay, thank y'all. Kabehi Properties LLC requesting a conditional use for a hotel over 10,000 square feet located within the HMC2 Historic Mariner Treme Bywater Commercial District. The Enhancement Corridor Design Overlay District, the AC4 Arts and Cultural Diversity Overlay District, the Small Multifamily Affordable Short-Term Rental Interim Zoning District, and the Residential Short-Term Rental Interim Zoning District on Square 379, Lot X in the 3rd Municipal District, bounded by North Rampart Street, Kellerack Street, Henriette DeLeo Street, and Columbus Street. Municipal addresses 1441 through 1451 North Rampart Street, 1104 Columbus Street, and 1115 Kellerack Street. The recommendation of the City Planning Commission being for approval, subject to 5 provisos. We have motion line over M22-533 by Councilmember King, approving the applicant's request on zoning docket 9122, subject to 5 provisos set forth in the City Planning Commission report.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Sure. So this is a conditional use application to allow a hotel at 1451 North Rampart Street, which is Rampart, between Kellerack and Columbus, in a commercial zoning district in the Marigny. In this particular zoning district, hotels are actually allowed by right up to 10,000 square feet. This would be over 10,000 square feet at about 30,000 square feet. And so that requires the conditional use process, which is a public process that allows for community input. The Planning Commission finds this to be an appropriate use for this vacant site, puts it back into commerce at a scale that's appropriate for the corridor, meshes with the purpose of the zoning district. There was minimal public comment to the Planning Commission. And so considering the appropriateness of the development for the site and the lack of public opposition, The Planning Commission does recommend approval of this application.
Thank you. Thank you. I make a motion to approve applicant's request. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Harris. Please vote your machines. Seven yeas, no nays. Applicant's request is approved.
We're now on top of page 20. All matters. The street name change for number 222 has been deferred to January 19th. The street name change for 522 has been deferred to January 19th. Ordinance calendar number 33,183 has been deferred to March the 9th. On top of page 21. We have all matters. Ordinance calendar number 33,671 has been deferred to to February the 2nd. Ordinance calendar number 33,866 has been deferred to January 19th. Ordinance calendar number 33,893 has been deferred to January 19th. We're on top of page 22. Ordinance calendar number 33,949 has been withdrawn. Ordinance calendar number 33,974 by Councilmember Green by request. An ordinance to amend and reordain section 146-760, 146-761, 146-763, and 146-765 of the Code of the City of New Orleans relative to honorary street dedication to clarify that nonprofit organizations can be recognized by honorary street names, to clarify the boundaries of the Vieux Carré for the purposes of the honorary street dedications, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Members of the council, this ordinance both addresses an outstanding issue and moves us forward on a particular issue. The ordinance clarifies that honorary street designations can honor individuals or nonprofit organizations, but it also prohibits such designations for private companies or political organizations. For those organizations that we feel are doing a good job, we may choose to acknowledge them, or if they're on a particular boulevard with the designation of an honorary street designation. But the ordinance also defines the boundaries of the Vieux Carré Commission, which is a little bit of a shortfall in existing legislation for the purposes of the honorary street designation program. The law that's on the books right now prohibits honorary street designations in the Vieux Carré, but did not define the specific boundaries. So this defines those boundaries. I ask for your approval of ordinance calendar number 33,974. I move as follows. May I entertain a second? Seconded by Council President Morrell. Are there any online comments or comments from the audience? If not, please signify your vote on the machine. 5 yeas, Council, 6 yeas, 7 yeas, no nays, unanimous. Thank you very much, members of the council.
At the bottom of the page, 33, ordinance calendar number 33,982 by Councilmember Green by request. An ordinance to approve and authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans acting by and through the New Orleans Aviation Board to enter into an amend and restated lease agreement at Louis Armstrong New Orleans International Airport with New Orleans Fuel Facilities and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Members of the council is involved with matters involving the aviation board in terms of approving leases and some contracts. So the background on this is that in 2017, before the new terminal opened, the New Orleans Aviation Board entered into a series of agreements to permit a firm, New Orleans Fuel Facilities, to take over fueling operations and construction related to refueling through November 30th of 2046. This amended lease agreement comes after that related construction was completed, and its intent is to reappraise to determine fair market value. It includes provisions providing for rent adjustments every 5 years, including a rent reset appraisal after 12 years. The rent reset appraisal process will also ensure that the lease agreement is still meeting all local, state, and federal requirements on leasing. again, to reemphasize, it's been approved by the Aviation Board and the City Council has oversight. And I, as the chairman of the Transportation Committee of the council, bring that before you. I move for approval. Question?
Is there a DBE component in this particular contract? And if it is, what is it?
Okay, on to the specifics. I can't say, and I wouldn't want to say specifics because I'm not familiar with it, but the Aviation Board is required to follow disadvantaged business enterprise participation. I just don't know the particulars.
Okay, well, I would,
If you've heard anything else.
no, and I'm just gonna ask moving forward. I know Councilmember King and I have had these conversations. Is that whenever there's a contract that comes before this body, and for the administration, if they're listening, and for council members that they're listening, we've been kind of casual about asking whether there's DBE participation, as well as local participation. So moving forward, I know specifically, we're going to continue to focus on the economics of this community, not just the crime and the social aspects of this community. So I would hope that each time there's a contract, each time there's a company that's out there making money, we would be ready and able and willing to explain what the local component is, and even more importantly, what the African-American business or DBE component is. So just moving forward.
I think that that's a great idea. And it also is something that is in the great and best interest of our city. And in fact, before this meeting ends, I'm going to ask my legislative director if she'll contact the Aviation Board, because I would also like to know about this particular contract. I feel that they are required to do so and may have done so, but I want to know that for a fact. And yes, that is a good idea moving forward. So I'll move at this time for adoption of calendar number 33-982. I have moved. Is there a second? Second by Council President Morrell. Members, please vote your machines. We have 7 yeas and no nays, and that measure passes. Thank you very much.
At the top of page 23, ordinance calendar number 33,983 has been deferred to January 19th. Ordinance calendar number 33,991 has been deferred to January 19th. At the bottom of the page, ordinance calendar number 33,992 by Councilmember King by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into a first amendment to the cooperative endeavor agreement to amend the cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and Ad Navigator, Inc. relative to the contractor providing personal education advising services available free of charge to city employees, including city employees who have children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews in NOLA public schools for an additional 1 year, and to modify or reaffirm certain terms and conditions as more fully set forth in the amendment as Exhibit 1 and incorporated and made a part hereof, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Wrapped it all up precisely. At this time, make a motion to adopt. Second by Councilmember Jeruso. 6 yeas, no nays. Adopted. Thank you.
On top of page 24, we have ordinance calendar number 33,993 by council members Jeruso and Thomas by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into our first amendment to the cooperative endeavor agreement to amend the cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans, the National Parent Leadership Institute, Inc., and the NOLA Business Alliance relative to the contractor providing 20 additional weeks of 3-hour sessions once a week to parents in order to help parents become better leaders for their children and families, to increase the maximum amount of compensation payable by the city to the contractor and the fiscal agent, to extend the term of the agreement for an additional 1 year, and to modify or reaffirm certain terms and conditions as more fully set forth in the amendment as Exhibit 1 and incorporated and made a part hereof, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
I think this answers a very important question about the work that the Urban League used to do with parenting, the work that many of our schools used to do. We talk about home economics and what happens domestically in our homes, as well as what the National Council of Negro Women used to do with parenting, and the question that people are asking each day when something happens with our juveniles or our adolescents, and that is where is parental accountability. So, Councilmember Jeruso, I don't know if you want to add to that, but I think this is very important moving forward, especially being able to help shape, teach, and work with parents.
I think all I want to say is more from a technical aspect is this is the Wisner monies that we unlock to make sure now this is the CEA appropriating that money to make sure that the work is being done. And obviously we'll keep a close eye because I think you're right, Councilmember Thomas. We want to see how addressing the causes and making things better in our.
With that, move adoption. Well, moved by Councilmember Jeruso, second by Councilmember Harris. Vote your machine.
At the bottom of the page, we have ordinance calendar number 33,994 by Councilmember Harris by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into an amendment, number 1, to a previously executed cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and Crescent City Pharmacy relative to the city through healthcare for the homeless, receives federal grant funding to promote health through accessible and comprehensive primary care, dental, and behavioral health services for New Orleans homeless, regardless of their ability to pay, to modify the provisions thereof and extend the term thereof for 2 years as more fully set forth in the amendment number 1 form as Exhibit 1 and made a part hereof and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This is a CEA with Healthcare for the Homeless and CC Pharmacy who seek to increase access to healthcare and pharmacy services by co-locating both programs. They both work jointly to make medications affordable and to improve patient outcomes. HCH has federal pricing requirements for pharmaceutical services with which CC Pharmacy complies, thus reaching more patients with limited ability to afford medical care. Is there any online or public comment? I'll move. Seconded by Councilmember Jeruso. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Harris, may I comment just for a second? All of us have a number of people, first off, if I may.
Personal privilege.
Yes, yes. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, it's a comment on this, and I should have made it before we voted, but I just want to emphasize to the public that yes, the council and the administration are involved with matters to provide services to those who are unhoused. We feel it. We're not just ignoring the situation, just like during the past freeze, we worked to make sure that those who were unhoused were sheltered as long as they went there, or we could even get them there. So I just want to emphasize to the public that this council and this city is very concerned about those who are unhoused getting the medical care that they need, and we'll do whatever we can to make available resources as are requested. But I want to encourage those who are unhoused to take advantage of those resources and ask us about them. That's all.
Council members, we're now going to go back to page 11. We have ordinance calendar number 33,977 by Councilmember Harris. An ordinance to amend and ordain Article 18, Sections 18.2.v, 18.13.b, and 18.24 to create the CCN Convention Center Neighborhood Overlay District of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance Ordinance number 4,264 MCS as amended by ordinance number 26,413 MCS and subsequent amendments applicable to the area bounded by Convention Center Boulevard and Pontchartrain Expressway, Thalia Street, Annunciation Street, Utah Street, Chapatula Street, Celeste Street, the Mississippi River flood wall, and Henderson Street, excluding Lot MF-1 on Block RP-5X, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto, zoning docket 6422, and there is an amendment.
The clerk and I are tag teaming this. This is an amendment to ordinance calendar number 33,977. Number 1, on page 6, Article 18.24.b on lines 91 and 92, after the word in and before the word and, remove the word height and insert the following new phrase in lieu thereof. Height, comma, unless the proposed building was approved in the development master plan and has undergone only minor changes as defined in Article 4.5.f.1, in which case no additional NPP shall be required. 2, on page 6, Article 18.24.b on line 94, after the word buildable, remove the word area and insert the following new phrase in lieu thereof. Area, comma, unless the proposed building was approved in the development master plan and has undergone only minor changes as defined in Article 4.5.f.1, in which case no additional NPP shall be required. Amendment 3, on page 6, lines 88 and 89, after the word in and before the word below, remove the phrase item 3.b and insert in lieu thereof items 3.b and 3.c. Amendment 4 on page 7, remove the text from lines 99 to 101 in its entirety and insert the following in lieu thereof. C, applicants shall follow all project NPP requirements, including all content and general procedures applicable to zoning text and map amendments as provided in Article 4.2.d.2, except with regard to mailed notice, which shall be as follows. Mailed notice for the NPP shall be sent by regular mail at least 15 days before the public hearing to all the parties identified in section 3.3.b.2, except that such notice shall be expanded to all properties within 1,200 feet of property lines of the subject property. Additionally, mailed notice shall be provided to the Lower Garden District and Warehouse District Neighborhood Associations, as well as the Office of Community Development for distribution to interested stakeholders, including but not limited to residents of River Garden Developments. Number 5 on page 7, lines 107 and 108, after the phrase Article 4.3 and before the word the, insert the following new phrase. In addition, the City Planning Commission and the council decisions on application for a conditional use shall evaluate the following factors specific to the CCN overlay district. 1, the proposed use is compatible with the CCN overlay district's purpose to promote a walkable mixed use and mixed income neighborhood with public benefits. 2, the proposed use preserves and promotes public access to the CCN overlay district, including sightlines and/or direct access to the Mississippi riverfront. 3, the proposed use does not create a material detriment to the public health, safety, and welfare to properties and residents within the CCN overlay district, as well as neighbors in surrounding areas, including but not limited to the Lower Garden District, Warehouse District, and River Garden developments. 6, on page 9, table 18-1, line 162, remove the existing row for hotel motel and enter the following in lieu thereof. In the table, the conditional use is, the C is struck out and it's P/C, permitted a conditional. Amendment 7 on page 13, after line 238 and before line 239, enter the following new phrase. There's a little footnote 5, hotels shall be considered permitted uses if they, 1, are located on the same square as a cultural facility of at least 10,000 square feet in size, or 2, have less than 180 individual guest rooms and are located at least 300 feet from any residential zoning district as measured from the closest lot line. Hotels shall be prohibited if, bullet point 1, there is already one hotel permitted on the square, or bullet point 2, they were within the square bounded by Annunciation, Melpomene, Euterpe, and Chapatula streets, excluding lot MF1, or by the square bounded by Thalia, Annunciation, Melpomene, and Chapatula streets. All other hotels shall be a conditional use. Finally, 8 on page 23, delete lines 450 through 452 and insert the following in lieu thereof. Additional temporary surface parking shall be permitted, subject to time restrictions up to 5 years. Permanent parking lots shall be subject to the standards of the overlay district and Article 23 of the comprehensive zoning ordinance, while certain design standards for temporary parking lots may be suspended commensurate with the time restrictions set forth by the City Planning Commission and improved in the Development Master Plan. Those are the amendments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Shall we vote on the amendments first? Okay, so I'll move the amendments. Seconded by Council Vice President Moreno. All in favor? Okay. So what this is, oh, I need one more vote. All right. Councilmember, all right, with 5, we're good on the amendment. Turning to what this does. Today, we are returning to the River District text amendment, which I mentioned we do in December when this council approved the overlay at the motion level. Over the past month, my team and I have continued to meet extensively on this amendment. My top priority throughout this process has been striking an appropriate balance between protecting the integrity of existing neighborhoods and promoting responsible economic development in this area. That includes opportunities for jobs, nearby affordable and workforce housing for hospitality workers, and amenities that support both neighbors and the visitors who contribute to our economy. Here's what we know. The River District is poised to create almost 6,000 permanent jobs, over 3,000 of which will be on site and will pay up to $60,000. Those projections don't even include the jobs associated with the future soccer stadium or museum. We will see at least 450 new affordable housing units in the neighborhood, priced to support families earning from 60% to 120% of area median income. And because this is indeed a neighborhood, we expect to see benefits for residents within the River District, as well as the surrounding areas of the Lower Garden District, River Gardens, and the Irish Channel, including investments in infrastructure and stormwater management. We also know that we will work with these developers to help with the homeless encampments that are around this area to help people get permanently housed. Along with all of this, the River District is expected to generate at least $43 million in new taxes for the city and state, supporting even more investment in public works, housing, and education. We'll be attracting more visitors, especially cruise passengers and convention goers, with new nearby hotel rooms that will take pressure off the warehouse district and the existing STRs. All of this is on a property that has sat vacant since Katrina, despite being at the intersection of uptown and downtown and right on the riverfront near our port. I've worked over this year to balance the promises of this development with the need for city oversight and protecting existing and future residents. I've mentioned that at the motion level last December. Specifically, I've been considering how to address one of the most intense uses, hotels in this area. Hotels are already permitted by right, but with the development of this scale, we need to ensure an ongoing opportunity for neighbors and city to weigh in on whether we are preserving the character of the area or creating a detriment to public health, safety, and welfare. So earlier in the motion phase, we thought this meant that we needed an across-the-board conditional use requirements for hotels. But I think we're better served by a more nuanced take. The city has already supported, financially and otherwise, the Music Museum, which will include a hotel. So it makes sense for that hotel to be permitted. But I'd also like to ensure we're not putting an undue burden for smaller, less intense hotels situated further from our residential neighborhoods. So hotels with fewer than 180 rooms and over 300 feet away from residential zoning will be permitted too. Hotels will be strictly prohibited on the lake side of Tchoupitoulas, and only one will be permitted per lot. All other hotels will remain conditional, allowing for neighborhood, CPC, and council oversight. Another piece of additional oversight that I'm adding in today's amendment is a new NPP requirement for the design review public meeting. That means that notification mailers for this NPP will cover a larger radius than typical NPP requirements, so that neighbors of this river district will be informed of what's going on and the changes that might be happening. A second aspect of this amendment is to clarify the rules around allowance of surface parking lots, requiring some landscaping around those temporary lots. And lastly, the amendment codifies the requirement that all workforce and affordable housing built in this development will remain affordable for 99 years. This means that these units will not be taken out of commerce. They will remain affordable for 99 years. This is a huge win for the city as we remain in desperate need of both workforce and affordable housing, especially close to downtown and jobs that are downtown. The overall economic development opportunities here are striking, and they stand to benefit our local residents, particularly those who work in the service industry. I'm really pleased to move this forward with huge thanks to the neighbors and representatives of the development team who've helped us get to this point. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank my team who has worked on this literally for a year, Liz Holman and Allison Port of my office. I know we have some public comments and I'm ready to take those. The first one is I am Tucker. Good morning, Ms. Tucker.
Good morning. I'm here briefly to speak about intentionality. I'm a proud member of the RD&I development. My company is providing engineering services and stormwater management services to the project. And I wanted to talk a little bit about today about what this opportunity means to me. As a DBE business, there's a lot of times when we're only thought of when there's a requirement and when there's a necessity for a team. And I've always wanted to be hired, and I wanted my company to be hired based on the fact that we're a damn good engineering company, and we happen to have these perceived as valuable acronyms behind our name. Being a part of this project with River District has expanded my opportunity into the private industry. I've had about this many, on one hand I can count, this many private jobs that I've been able to get access to because there wasn't a requirement, because people didn't want to do business the right way, which is a diverse way. Being a part of this River District neighborhood has allowed my company to be exposed to other partners and developers in the surrounding area, around the convention center and around this whole span of property along the river that otherwise would not have known about us. And so now I've been invited to be able to bid and to be able to submit proposals on 2 other projects that are ancillary to the area that are being brought up. So we all know everything is about being on the design side, not the behind side. I say that all the time. I'm repeating that from a bank owner of Liberty Bank. And I love that quote because oftentimes DBs always find ourselves on the behind side. We're always an afterthought. Being a part of a project where there is real intentionality, where there is a real commitment to doing things not only the right way, but for the right reasons, is really effectuating different change and different progress in a different way. I'm a member of IDB. I'm one of the members that has put forth more regulations on certain developers because of this problem. That's why I wanted to be on IDB. I've conflict myself out of work, but I had never had to work in the first place. So what was the deal, right? What's the difference? But this is why we're doing what we're doing. This is the reason how we can make change. And I know that with this example, we can celebrate it and we can hopefully repeat it. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker. Ms. Hernandez.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you for the hard work that I know your staff has put in. It's been a long road for us and not just you, because We started prior to COVID, and then we had almost a 2-year break. We found out that we were successfully selected and we're ready to really put in the work. And many of you may or may not know, I've taken a break from doing development projects for the past several years. And when Louis Larcella and Todd reached out and said, we really want you to be a part of the team, I said, do I want to be a part of this team and why? And I said, first of all, it's impactful. The team is probably the most diverse of ever a project that I've seen in the city since I've been doing development. And what I mean by that is that they had women developers who weren't just a part of the team, who are actually developing and have experience doing that, as well as minorities, but it also was a use of collective experience and interest. And we did have the foresight to say, we're going to be intentional, and it's not just intentional as we're having IAM participate, and literally she was selected. It really wasn't an RFP. We brought her in on the beginning of the team, but we're doing that throughout from ownership, from the development, actual activity, to SEB, DBE participation, and even when we open retail storefronts, we really want it to be reflective. And not only for visitors, but for people who live here. We want it to be a destination and have some ritual where everybody in the city can say, that's where we want to be. And I think that it's going to continue to take the collective support and involvement. And we appreciate this as the first step. And as like we say, take me to the river is where you want to be.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. Ms. Pineda.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you. So as the leader of a local area chamber of commerce dedicated to creating opportunity for Hispanic businesses, I'm here to speak in support of the rezoning request proposed by the River District. And I want to thank them for including our organization to come before you in this effort. It's not very often that, you know, an effort like this includes the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce as, you know, the smaller one of the mainstream chambers. So, but for our community, a project like this is critical, particularly right now, and especially when we're talking about workforce development, which is one of our focus areas and pillars. The surrounding neighborhood and all of New Orleans will benefit from the influx of capital and improvements the River District partners are bringing to our area. The River District promises transformative change, big ideas, and expert execution. I'm excited about this vision, including the new entertainment and living options this means for the area. I think this is what we want for New Orleans right now. Everyone wants to hear about these exciting news instead of negative things. And of course, our economic development. The group's commitment to affordable housing for our local workforce also serves as a model for how neighborhoods can responsibly build in New Orleans. And we want to be leaders. So we want to come before other cities with a model like this. It's no secret how hard the pandemic hit hospitality and service industry workers, many of them Hispanics, particularly with substantial job losses. And we are just starting to see signs of early recovery. Creative solutions are needed to continue to reverse these trends. And on top of that, we have, you know, our inflation and everything else going on with the economy. So we need these opportunities to change, creating greater resiliency and attract and retain the dedicated workers who keep our doors open and establishments humming. One of those creative solutions is more workforce housing in New Orleans. The River District has committed to a mix of workforce and affordable housing as part of its guiding principles. I'm hopeful and optimistic about what this new pool of available housing will mean to the quality of life of hospitality service workers, many of them in our community. I wholeheartedly encourage City Council to embrace this bold new vision of the River District and vote in favor of this zoning. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Ronnie LaCour.
Hello, I'm Romy LaCour, representing Housing NOLA and the Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance at 4640 North Carrollton Avenue. We applaud the prioritization and inclusion of workforce housing in this project, which can serve as an example for future development on the riverfront to replicate through its increased affordability provisions to accommodate the area's inclusionary zoning. We would like to express our support for this development and encourage the council to vote to approve this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burnside.
So I'm not real good at sending mixed messages, and want to say good things and bad things at the same time. So the good things are pretty obvious. Affordable housing, workforce housing, 99 years. First of all, I owe my councilwoman a thank you, and I do appreciate that a lot. It's helpful to have poor people thought about in the process of the design side, as it was said, instead of the behind side. I was down there on the corner of Chapatoulas and the interstate, walking through the tents, seeing some people. Across the street a couple of times, there are a lot of 18-wheelers on Chapatoulas because it's all headed towards the port, of course. If you want to connect that riverside to the neighborhoods, you're going to need something physical. You're going to need some kind of bridge like we built for the Catholic school. Joe remembers the pedestrian bridge over a street. Or having been a student at the University of Arizona, sometimes you can build underpasses for people to walk. But that's a really wide street and it has a lot of traffic, including pretty fast driving 18-wheelers. So if you really want the neighborhood to be integrated into the riverside that you're developing as a neighborhood instead of only as a tourist destination, if you want that physical connection, then people don't need to just drive there in cars, they need to be able to walk there. And if you're older and in a wheelchair or handicapped or have children with you, you don't really want to navigate CHOP, not really. And it is therefore important that on the design side, the neighborhood be physically incorporated into its surroundings by some sort of pedestrian corridor that can be designed by people a lot more powerful than me. The other thing I want to bring up is homeless. The homeless are never really included. World War II Museum saw to it that the homeless don't hang out around there very much. Azaman Inn has been moved. A lot of places under the overhead overhead car driving bridges are fenced off. They are the most forgotten among us, and that's in the long term bad for all of us because rents are going to do nothing but go up. Take care.
Thanks, Mr. Burnside. Mr. James.
Thank you, Council. Todd James with part of the management team with RD&I helping to manage the infrastructure and finalize this first round of the entitlement process. Thank you again, Councilwoman Harrison, to your team. I know they've had to field a lot of my calls, even ones that may have been a little testy. So I appreciate their patience and time working with me through the process. Because this has, as Tara mentioned, this has become more of a passion project for me, being from here in my first really big development package home. So I appreciate you guys' support for where we are. We do, like I did mention, we do have many steps ahead of us. You will see us back here again, addressing a lot of the concerns that you did hear from people in the past and even from Mr. Summer Burnside's comments. Traffic is key to how we resolve this. And you're going to see our team working quite a bit with DOTD, the state, DPW, as well as other public entities, as well as the port, to resolve traffic in that area, or at least figure out a process how we can make this community connected to the neighborhoods that are around it. So without taking too much time, I truly appreciate you guys' support. And if you have any questions for me, I'm here to field them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James. Are there any comments from the dais? Any, Councilmember Green?
Councilmember Harris, I would just like to applaud you and your staff and everyone associated with this development and what's being brought before the council. This is a new year and this is a great start to the new year. This particular legislation addresses those who are unhoused, long-term residents that are affordable, and also involves disadvantaged business enterprises. Got to use the right term, but I just want to say I'm proud to see Tara and our, folks out there who are working on this project, Todd, and also I am, and others who are associated with this, who I know, who happen to be African-American, but they are hardworking business people who've made a tremendous contribution to our city that doesn't get recognized much. But I am glad to see the deliberateness in terms of this particular development. And I look forward to it being developed. And every time I go by and see development, I'll know that it involves something that the council, through Councilmember Harris's office, was involved, that is addressing comprehensively issues that are of concern in our city. So Happy New Year. This is a great project. Great to see you all here. And once again, Councilmember Harris, to you and your staff, this is a very laudable bit of work that is being done here, and I look forward to the development.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Councilmember Green. Any other comments from the dais? Any public online comments?
We had one, but it was Miss LaCourse who spoke.
Okay, with that, I just want to thank the development team, my team. I think we have a good start to the new year. I look forward to this project. That's super exciting, especially for the affordable housing aspect of it, and the retail aspect of it, because as people know, I like to shop. So I'm going to go ahead and move as amended. Councilmember Green, seconds. 5 yeas, motion carries. Thank you all.
Before we go to the next item, Mr. Morgan, excuse me. Got something in my throat. Mr. Morgan, come on up. I know that you wanted to make a comment on a previous item, so I'm going to take personal privilege to allow you to comment. Your card was not recognized.
Evening, everybody.
Go ahead, Mr. Morgan.
I just heard a statement from you, Councilman Green. You stated that African-American, in a way, it's like they have contributed a lot, but it seems like to a certain percentage they're being left out. But this what I want to bring to your attention. In my time, we had industrial.
Bring that mic close. I can't hear you.
In my time, we had industrial art into the school. And in industrial art, they taught plumbing, electrician, sheetrock, all the trades that was needed to get a house together or build a building. And every year, the contractors will come to the school or notify the principal of the best student they had in those different trades. And they'll come and get them students. And the student will work as a journeyman for a certain amount of apprentice as a certain amount of time, and then a journeyman. And then they went on and work into their own business. But this is what I'm saying, that we should bring back industrial art into these schools, because if we don't, you understand, Delgado's supposed to be the place where they will go to learn a trade. But many of them tell me that it's so complicated going to Delgado with different procedures, they lose faith in the system. And when they lose faith in the system, that means Afro-America in a large percentage is going to be left out the work market, because the time is coming when I even see it myself. Big buildings goes up in the city, and I watch them, like Popeyes on Earhart and Calton, where I stay, and I didn't see no Afro-American working on that building. You understand? But like I said, you understand, we got to bring industrial art back in the school if Afro-America is going to survive in the job market. If we don't, there will be instinct in the job market. Thank you.
Council members, we're now going to go to resolution R 2310. We have to take this up under suspension. A resolution urging the mayor of the city of New Orleans to conduct a national search for a superintendent of police to replace retired Superintendent Sean Ferguson, to engage in a fair, inclusive, transparent, and clearly defined public process for the selection of the NOPD superintendent, including community engagement from all council districts and from current and former NOPD officers, to create a NOPD superintendent advisory selection committee comprising a broad spectrum of stakeholders, and to support an increase in pay for the superintendent, along with other best hiring practices to attract top national and local candidates. Council members, we need to suspend the rules to receive this resolution.
It's been moved and seconded. Five yeas, no nays.
Council.
Now we need to further suspend the rules to add it to our agenda. Six,
Seven yeas.
and now you can discuss it and then vote on it.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. My colleagues know that I'm generally not a resolution person. But this is an exception to my general rule because I think this resolution that I worked on with a number of my colleagues, all of them, is an expression of intent and part of the public record, which makes it important. It also relates directly to the city of New Orleans. I first want to say that I wish nothing but the best for interim Chief Woodfork, who I met with yesterday. I'm rooting for her and I look forward to working with her. I think part of the guiding principles that we're all looking about, whatever district you're in, is looking for whoever is the best to lead NOPD right now. That person may very well be here, but it may be an outsider too. You think about what we're doing with the rank and file police officers. We have recruiting campaigns built around not only trying to get people locally to apply to be a cop, but we're also asking others outside of New Orleans too. Why should it be any different for the police chief? I also think a public process is desired and healthy. It brings trust. We want to ensure public engagement and ensure that leaders are at the table. What should we want in a competitive environment? As I think people have seen across the country right now, we are in a competitive environment when it comes to first responders and city workers, as Councilmember Green is more than willing to point out to us. I think looking at salary and other benefits to ensure that we have the best possible candidate is something that we can all and should support. So with that, I know I have some light ups here on the machine. Council President Morrell.
Thank you, Councilmember Jeruso. I'll be brief. I have a couple of quick points. I think that if we are being honest as a council and we are listening to the public sentiment that has been expressed since the announcement of the retirement of the chief, there is a consensus across the entire community, whether it be our community leaders or our business leaders, that we have a transparent and thorough national search. I support the work of Interim Chief Woodfork, and I would further add, I think it is a tremendous disservice to Chief Woodfork to not have a thorough and transparent national search, because in order for us to build the critical mass of support across the entire community for Chief Woodfork, I think that it is important that our chief compete for the job. I think that helps her establish herself as the next chief of the NOPD, if that is her wish. Furthermore, to be candid, I appreciate the efforts of Councilmember Geruso when he's talking about the pay of the chief of police. There is a national average of what chiefs are paid across this country, and our chief is paid tremendously less than that. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge on the front end that if you're going to solicit interest from across the nation to be the next chief of the city of New Orleans, that salary has to at least match what the national average is, because there is nobody interested in coming to coach a team that is in crisis if they're going to have to take a pay cut to do it. So I support that measure as well. But let me add one last thing before I pass the mic. I will be very candid in saying that this council did a tremendous amount of work in trying to thread the needle between funding NOPD and funding the other different programs and processes outside of NOPD to prevent individuals from entering the criminal justice system versus reacting to it. Candidly, I don't support giving any more money to any group, whether it's the NOPD or the Police and Justice Foundation, without a guarantee and a commitment to a national search for our next chief. I think this council has been resolute in repeatedly stating that is our will. That is the will of the public. We have dedicated a tremendous amount of resources in this year's budget for NOPD. And I personally will not support any additional money going to any group, whether it's a third party or the NOPD, for any additional resources until this is resolved. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Councilmember Thomas and then come back to Councilmember Moreno. Councilmember Thomas.
First of all, thank you for the resolution. I think the resolution supports what many of us have consistently said is share criminal justice, even though sometimes we don't know what that means. But we're going to figure it out as hopefully as a body at some point. We've been consistent in saying that a national search gives us an opportunity to vet and give us the best possible candidate. Well, for me, it was easy to support that because that's what I know. I went through that. I was part of that in the past, and it yielded tremendous results. 6% reduction in violent crime, double the national average. The murder rate went from 424 to 159. But it was also coupled with the stuff that we did as a body in funding youth organizations and the $1 million+ that I'm putting in my district to do outreach and mentoring and conflict resolution. But the other thing that's important is that when we talk about Rob Masson listening to constituencies, even though we all have a common constituency, the people, there are different constituencies. And when I've talked to African-American female groups, proud sororities, proud Black women's groups, the one thing they are consistent with in their comments is that give this interim chief a chance to succeed, not a bullet in a target to fail. So while there's different groups voicing different things, there is a very important constituency out there that has not been shy and bashful. If you talk to them, you listen to them, they haven't been shy and bashful in saying that this African-American female with this resume be given the best possible chance to succeed with the resources to succeed, minus the politics to stop her from succeeding. So thank you for the resolution. I think it reinforces what I think most of us have said, but I'm never going to be blind to specific constituencies who have specific relationships and specific intentions about the people that belong to that group. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Councilmember Jerusa, for working on this resolution. I appreciate your work on this and my input, which was to encourage current and former NOPD officers to be part of this process, to be part of deciding who they want to lead them, whether it be Interim Chief Woodfork, whether it be somebody who we recruit on a national level. I think that their engagement in this process is critical. I've also heard from constituents from across the community who want to be part of the conversation. And again, I think ensuring that they have their voices heard, no matter who they are, is critical to this process, is critical to us helping to solve the violent crime that is plaguing the city. So I encourage, with whatever process that is set up, that the community engage, that NOPD feel free to engage without fear of retaliation, and that we go forward as a city to choose the next superintendent of NOPD, whether that be Interim Chief Woodfork or whether it be somebody else. But what we need right now is some innovative thinking about not only policing, but how we can help this community. And so I look forward to working with whoever is our next superintendent of police.
Thank you. Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you, Councilmember Jeruso, for your work on this resolution. And what this resolution does is it really just sets up an outline for best practices to select a new chief. So what the resolution calls for is for there to be, pretty much a national headhunting group to come in and find those qualified candidates, then bring them down to the local level. This resolution calls for a local blue ribbon panel, advisory commission, hopefully made up of community leaders, business leaders, et cetera, to then send a recommendation to the mayor, and then the mayor make her choice and then brought to the city council for the confirmation process. I think what's really important in this resolution is that this resolution in the very last paragraph talks about that the council urges and supports increasing the salary of the NOPD chief. Let me explain why that is important. Currently, the New Orleans police chief makes roughly $185,000 a year. The head of NOLA BA makes $265,000 a year. The executive director of the Sewage and Water Board makes $322,000 a year. Groups who I have personally talked to who work in the field of hiring police chiefs and finding police chiefs across the country tell me that in New Orleans, to be competitive, we need to pay roughly $250,000 to $300,000 a year. If you take a look at where Chief Harrison, our former chief, went to Baltimore, they pay $275,000 a year. So I say all of these things because this resolution is important, because it is that guide, it is that outline on how this search should occur. And we hope that the mayor moves forward with a process like this. Thank you, Councilmember Jeruso.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Councilmember Green.
Councilmember Jeruso, thank you for your time and for your asking for input relative to this particular resolution. It's very timely for a variety of reasons, but I'd like to just emphasize, as was alluded to by other council members, that the members of the public should be and deserve to be comfortable that the process is an open process and that it involves expertise and suggestions from persons within our city, within our police department, within our business and community development community, and as many people as who want to have input should have some input. This suggestion of an advisory committee in terms of the police chief is one where it potentially gives the ability for us to look at some of those factors that could strengthen the work of our new chief once the decision is made. For example, the question of pay, for example, it's not just a matter of choosing the police chief. Maybe it's a matter of looking at pay or looking at some of the responsibilities. This is an opportunity for us to open the book and look at some of the other factors involved with a police chief. So I just look forward to working with the mayor, with this selection committee, with our public to get as much input as possible before this decision is made. I do want to use this as an opportunity to say something that I said before, that the police are but one component of law enforcement in our city. They are the first responders. We see them all the time. They have uniforms on. They're the ones who are called to the scenes of crimes. I've been to the scene of too many crimes recently, including murders, and the police are there in their white and blue uniforms. But I just want us to continue to recognize that no matter who the police chief is, no matter how many police officers that we have, that we need a comprehensive, hardworking, motivated criminal justice system that includes the district attorney, criminal district court judges, juvenile district court judges, Orleans justice system, juvenile justice intervention center, parole officers, and the like. They all must work together to be motivated if we are going to have a success in addressing this emergency that we have right now relative to crime. So they have to be in support for this police chief. So it's not just a matter of choosing a police chief. It's a matter of having a comprehensive and motivated plan to address some of the concerns that we have in our city. But thank you, Councilman DeRusso, for bringing this up at this very important and timely manner. And I look forward to as open a process that results in us having the best police chief available to us in the city of New Orleans. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. Mr. Burnside?
I suppose all of you know I'm not really in favor of the police, but I will try to be a positive force here today. The first thing I would point out is if you're going to raise the police chief's pay, you should raise the mayor's pay. The guy in charge of the Sewage and Water Board is a state employee. The guy in charge of the NOLA VA is a federal employee. The guy in charge of the University Medical Center, I think, made $1 million last year. So I'm sure we could raise the pay. The guy in charge of our zoo makes about $800,000 a year. So raising pay, I'm not directly against it, not directly for it either. I will say that if you're going to be accountable and transparent, one of the voices that you really should include in your process, although it will be very difficult to do so, is the NOPD officers who left. Occasionally they make it to the newspaper, occasionally somebody quotes them, but they don't seem to have a voice explicitly stating why they left and what would have let them either A, stay, or B, come back. Not everybody who left necessarily wanted to, and not everybody who left has permanently burnt their bridges. A few of them might decide to come back if somebody asked them, what would it take for you to come back and serve our people? So that's a voice I think will not be included, and I do believe it should be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Burnside, I just want you to know that the second resolved paragraph says that the city engage in a fair, open, inclusive, and trustworthy process for the selection of the NOPD superintendent that includes community engagement in the form of neighborhood forums held in each of New Orleans' 5 councilman districts. And this is Councilmember Harris's language, and engagement of current and former NOPD officers. Yeah, both.
I gotta say, that part here, I've been here 5 years. Better than it was the last meeting, but it's still sometimes, I don't really think it's my ears.
No, it's not. I mean, mine was down earlier, finally starting to sound a little bit better. Mr. Clark, have your card, sir.
As always, my name is Albert True Clark. I'm always here representing Tree Group. My name is David Jewett. My name is Mayor's Mobilization, Racism, and Government. My name is POCC President Council. When we say, whoever y'all decide to bring in as relates to chief of police, we definitely need to make sure that they ain't part of the problem. We're talking about the problem, you know, of time that we PD history, you know. We know PD, you know. One of these games in our community, that's how we look at them, you know. We you know, what happened, following Hurricane Katrina, you know, what happened in the days of it. We remember what happened, you know, in the West Bank when they cut the brother off, kill him. in his body up, you know, in the police, you know. So nobody, you know, I'm just speaking for the public, you know, for the masses, those are folks who are afraid to come down here and tell y'all exactly what you need to hear, you know. Again, we got a black community here, you know. Y'all walk over us every day. There's no respect for us, no love for us, you know. You know, but again, you know, we don't need nobody to come in here, they're going to ignore our interests, you know, our concern, our fears, you know. Not just simply conquer fear, you know, because a lot of times when people are afraid to confront y'all and go in the PD, you know, because you know they work with the outlaws, the gangsters, you know, like the drug dealers, you know. They work with the business folks, you know, trying to send push out the city and kill white supremacy.
Mr. Mahdi?
Yeah, George Mahdi, Neighborhood Unity and Merge. And, you know, while we recognize the importance of funding the police department and the public defenders and, you know, the juvenile justice, we need to keep in mind and acknowledge and address the needs and challenges of the traditional forgotten people, the underserved segments of the society, particularly the large, unskilled, uneducated, urban Black male labor pool who form the permanent petrified cast of New Orleans. Their problems are real and continuous. Young Black males are not the villains. They're the victims of our society. They're the ones who comprise the roles of the public defender, you know, the jailhouse rosters and the juvenile justice elements. Remember also that funding should begin at the cradle and not the graveyard institutions that we have here. And this is just continuation of what we've had in the past. We have to expand our efforts, invest in education, recreation, and not just criminal justice, because we won't incarcerate our way out of this problem. We have to invest in our youth. We have to rebuild Lincoln Beach. We have to restore the playgrounds in this area. We have to have established reading clinics, Little League programs, Boy Scout programs. This is critical and necessary if we're going to change the course of what's happening in our city. And, you know, or else it's going to continue, we're going to stay victimized and still pointing, fingers at each other, who's the villain and who's the victim in this situation. So this is what we need to do to change the character of New Orleans. You know, invest in our youth. Invest in programs at the cradle, not the graveyard institutions that are going to keep them locked up with the school to prison pipeline. It's the injustice and criminal that our kids can't read at the grade level. That's not their fault, that's our fault. So I'm just urgently demanding and urging you to look at the situation for what it is and invest your time and efforts in trying to do this, because you're representing our interests. That's what the politics and the politicians and government is for. And if it's not, we're just going to have anarchy and we're going to have a destructive society that's going to help no one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahdi. Just two quick points in closing. One, to piggyback on Councilmember Moreno's statement, my staff has found that Baltimore, she said, has a salary of $275, Detroit, $269,000, and Nashville, $220. So we're well below where we want to be. And then also, I think Councilmember Green made the very good point that police is not the only answer when it comes to keeping our communities safe. And that I've asked various departments to meet before the quarterly budget meetings so we can talk about blight and safety and permits and grass cutting and all of these things, tire dumping, trash being in areas, to make sure that we're working collectively to lift up neighborhoods and make them as safe as possible. With that, I've moved for adoption, seconded by Vice President Moreno. Members, please vote your machines. I moved. We have nothing. We have nothing up on our screen so far. We did two suspension. We did the suspensions. So this is now actually the resolution itself. President Morel, this didn't happen under Vice President Moreno. Thank you all. 7-0.
Council members, we're now going to go back to page 25. Ordinance calendar number 33,995 has been deferred to February 2nd and referred to the Criminal Justice Committee. At the bottom of the page, ordinance calendar number 33,996 by Councilmember Thomas, an ordinance to temporarily waive certain fees, permit fees, and requirements within and around the Joe Brown Park located at 5601 Reed Boulevard, New Orleans, Louisiana, in conjunction with the Mothers Wanting Our Children Back event on Saturday, December 17, 2022, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. to specify the duration and boundaries of said waiver and to provide otherwise with respect thereto.
It's an annual event that it's actually already happened. And this waives the fees for this nonprofit organization who has been sponsoring prayer for the families of victims and lost loved ones. Mr. Burnside, you have a card in.
I think the basic problem is pretty obvious. It's hard to be against prayer. We could all use some, including me. Nonetheless, everything that we do in this world costs money, even our churches. So somebody somewhere has to pay. Sometimes it's a rich deacon, sometimes it's a bunch of poor widows throwing a mite in a basket, but somebody somewhere has to pay. And it's really unfair to ask somebody to pay and at the same time provide them with an example of a person who does not pay. It's sort of the reason Trump's taxes are so irritating is because he benefited a lot from being a citizen of this country and doesn't seem to have paid very much for the infrastructure necessary for this country to continue to exist. We have a military, we have sewers, we have parks, we have things that need to be paid for. And from my point of view, every single person can pay something. And for us to agree that somebody doesn't need to pay anything just as a competition, because everybody would love to pay nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside. With that, I'll move adoption. None of the machines are in sync. Move adoption, second by Councilmember Moreno. Vote your machines. Voice roll call. All in favor? 5 yeas, no nays. It is adopted.
We're on top of page 26. We have ordinance calendar number 33,997 has been deferred to January 19th and referred to the Budget Committee. Ordinance calendar number 33,998 has been deferred to January 19th and referred to the Budget Committee. All matters. On top of page 27, ordinance calendar number 33,999 has been deferred to January 19th and referred to the Budget Committee. Ordinance calendar number 34,000 has been deferred to January 19th and referred to the Budget Committee. on top of page 28, ordinance calendar number 34,001 has been deferred to January 19th and referred to the Budget Committee. We have ordinance calendar number 34,002 by Councilmember Harris by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into the Second Amendment to a previously executed cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and Total Community Action for 6 months to provide community engagement services related to the MacArthur Safety and Justice Challenge Grant in Orleans Parish and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This is a CEA with Total Community Action who provides community engagement services to the Ethnic and Racial Disparity Working Group and the Office of Criminal Justice Coordination. It's fully funded by the MacArthur Safety and Justice Challenge Grant and is designed to address ethnic and racial disparities within the Orleans Parish criminal legal system. So I move for adoption.
As a board member of PCA, I'm going to recuse myself from this vote.
Thank you.
You need somebody else. Yes. No, he's recusing himself. Wait. I'm coming. We're now on top of page 29. We have ordinance calendar number 34,003 has been deferred to February 2nd and referred to the Criminal Justice Committee. We have ordinance calendar number 34,004 by Councilmember Morrell, an ordinance to amend ordinance number 29,265 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues for the city of New Orleans for the year 2023 to appropriate funds to the Orleans Parish Public Defender's Office within miscellaneous programs to fund parity as statutorily required by ordinance calendar number 33,093 and maintain the funding of holistic juvenile defense via Orleans Parish Public Defender's Office for partnership with Louisiana Center for Children's Right and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Essentially, when we were doing the budget process last year, we had an error where we did not fully fund parity between the Orleans Parish Public Defenders and the DA's office required by statute. This seeks to remedy that. It's one of two instruments. Mr. Mahdi, you had a comment?
Yeah, George Mahdi Neighborhood
Yeah.
Unity and Merge. We just want to reiterate what we said before on the previous issue, that these programs, while they're good, they're graveyard institutions. And we need to invest in the cradle with these young kids before they even get involved in with the public defender or either the juvenile justice system. And as you can see, we're having a problem with these kids and it's not their fault. And we have to understand that. We have to invest in them to show them and give them positive programs, you know, like scouting and little leagues and you know, just the panoply of programs that we can put out to give them, to help them make positive choices so they won't have to choose the wrong way of life. They can choose the right way of life and be productive citizens. And this should be, you know, an agreement for everybody. So we just want to reiterate the importance of investing in our kids, because if we don't, we're going to have this nightmare that we live in today with the juvenile crime problem, gangs in the streets and so forth. And, you know, it's just unacceptable. And really, we should do more to help them in these situations. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move to adopt. If there's no other comment. Mr. Green seconds, please vote your machines. 7 yeas, no nays. Motion's adopted. On the next one, there's a correction, Madam Clerk. Sorry, 6 yeas.
Okay, yes, sir. On top of page 30, ordinance calendar number 34,005 is stated Councilmember Moreno, and we're going to remove her name and we're going to replace it with Councilmember Morel. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 29,266 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to appropriate funds to the Orleans Parish Public Defender's Office with a miscellaneous program to fund parity and statutorily required by ordinance calendar number 33,093 and maintain the funding of holistic juvenile defense via Orleans Parish Public Defender's Offices, partnership with Louisiana Center for Children's Rights and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members, this specifically addresses the issue through which we fund the we fund the Louisiana Center for Children's Rights, provide the defense counsel through the Orleans Parish Public Defender's Office, the companion ordinance to the previous one. I don't see any comments. Person, do we have any online?
No.
Hearing none, I will move that we adopt this ordinance as well. Seconded by Councilmember Green, please vote your machines. 6 yeas, no nays, the motion adopted.
At the bottom of the page, motion line over M22-516 has been deferred to January 19th. On top of page 31, all matters, resolution line over R22-529 has been deferred to January 19 and referred to the Budget Committee. Resolution line over R22-530 has been deferred to January 19. Motion line over M22-537 has been deferred to January 19th. We're now going to go to page 33. Resolution R23-5 by Councilmember Thomas, a resolution calling the election in the Eastover Neighborhood Improvement and Security District for Saturday, April 29th, 2023.
Move adoption. It's another one of those special taxing districts. Moved by me, second by Councilmember Moreno. All in favor? 6 yeas, no nays, and the resolution carried.
We have resolution R23-6 by Councilmember Thomas, a resolution calling the election in the McKendall Estates Neighborhood Improvement District for Saturday, April 29th, 2023.
Same thing for McKendall. Moved by me, seconded by Councilmember Morel. All in favor? 7 yeas, no nays, the resolution carries.
6
yeas, no nays. This is a list of the same thing for different subdivisions, so I'll just call, get a second, and then we'll move.
Resolution R23-7 by Councilmember Thomas, a resolution calling an election in the Tamaron Subdivision Improvement District for Saturday, April 29th.
Moved by me, second by Councilmember Morel. All in favor? 6 yeas, no nays. 7 yeas, no nays, it carries. Is 7 going twice, 8? Okay, 7.
At the bottom of the page, resolution R23-8 by Councilmember Thomas, a resolution calling an election in the Lake Carmel Subdivision Improvement District for Saturday, April 29th, 2023.
Moved by me, second by Councilmember Morel. All in favor? 7 yeas, no nays.
On top of page 34, we have resolution R23-9.
Moved by
Wait, by Councilmember Thomas, a resolution calling an election in the Kingwood Subdivision Improvement District for Saturday, April 29th, 2023.
I'll be in Kingswood tonight. Moved by me, second by Councilmember Jeruso. Vote your machines. Whenever I say 6, 7 pops up. 7 yeas, no nays. Who's doing?
Council members,
It's adopted.
we need to suspend the rules to go to ordinances on first reading.
If I say 6,
Ordinance on first readings, ordinance calendar 34,006 by Councilmember Harris, an ordinance to establish a conditional use to permit a commercial short-term rental in the CBD-5 urban core neighborhood lower intensity mixed-use district in the recession of ordinance calendar 17-249 zoning docket 06195 located on square 257 lot 88 or 2 or 11 on lot 87 or 81 in the first municipal district bounded by Julia Street, Barone Street, Gerard Street, O'Keefe Avenue, municipal address 933 through 939 Julia Street, and otherwise to provide with respects thereto, zoning docket number 8122. Ordinance calendar 34,007 by Councilmember King, and ordinance to grant an amendment to ordinance number 28,987 MCS zoning docket 10121, which granted a conditional use to a permit a vocational educational facility in the C1 General Commercial District to grant a waiver of the requirements of Article 15, Section 15.3.B.F to allow for a structural ceiling height of less than 12 feet to grant a waiver of the landscape island requirement of Article 23, Section 23.7.c, and to grant a waiver of the landscaping plan submission requirement and execution thereof as outlined in Article 23, Section 23.3.B located on an undesignated square plot 2-B in the 5th Municipal District bounded by Woodland Highway, Woodland Drive, and Tellers Drive, municipal address 6035 Woodland Highway, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto, zoning docket 8222. Ordinance calendar 34,008 by Council Members Green and Thomas, and ordinance to affect the zoning change from an HURD2 historic urban two-family residential district to an HUMU neighborhood mixed-use district overlay zoning district, small multifamily affordable short-term rental interim zoning district, residential short-term rental interim zoning district on square 1065 lot A municipal in the 3rd Municipal District bounded by Franklin Avenue, North Miro Street, Painter Street, and North Tonty Street. Municipal address 22,000, 2202, 2200, 2202 Franklin Avenue, and otherwise to provide respect thereto, zoning docket 8522. Ordinance calendar 34,009 by Councilmember Harris, and ordinance to establish a conditional use to permit a neighborhood commercial establishment in an HURD2 historic urban two-family residential district on square 101 lot 1 in the 6th Municipal District bounded by Chippewa Street, Taladana Street, Annunciation Street, and Louisiana Avenue, municipal address 3301 Chippewa Street, and 700 through 712 Taladana Street, and otherwise to provide respects thereto, zoning docket number 8822. Ordinance calendar 34,010 by Councilmember Harris, and ordinance to grant an affordable housing plan development in the C1 General Commercial District in the residential short-term rental interim zone overlay district on square 420 lot 7, 8, or 6, B or 5, C or 4, 3, Part A, and 9. In the 1st Municipal District bounded by Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, Willow Street, Clara Street, Thalia Street, municipal address 2809 through 2829 Martin Luther King Boulevard, and 1412 through 1416 Willow Street, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto, zoning docket 8922. Ordinance calendar 34,011 by Councilmember Jeruso, and ordinance to establish a conditional use to permit a commercial space over 5,000 square feet in the floor area in the HUB1 Historic Urban Neighborhood Business District on square 580 lots 1 and 2 in the second municipal district bounded by Canal Street, North Alexandria Street, Abbeville Street, and North Murray Street, municipal address 44-3 Canal Street, and otherwise to provide respect thereto. Zoning docket 9222. Ordinance calendar 34,012 by Councilmember King, and ordinance to repeal paragraph 8 of section 10-122 of the Code of the City of New Orleans to eliminate the alcohol beverage outlet application processing fee and otherwise to provide respect thereto. Ordinance calendar 34,013 by Council Members Jeruso, Harris, and King by request, and ordinance to amend ordinance number 28,867 MCH, which approved the New Orleans Tourism and Cultural Fund proposed budget for 2022 to reflect the NOTCF's updated budget of revenue and expenditures for 22 and otherwise to provide respect thereto. Ordinance calendar 34,014 by Councilmember King by request, an ordinance to waive certain fees related to building permits necessary to perform non-structural repairs of structures damaged by the tornadoes which occurred in the city of New Orleans on December 14 and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 34,015 by Councilmember Thomas by request, an ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into a first amendment to the cooperative endeavor agreement to amend the cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and the Auburn ENT LLC doing business as Equus Workforce Service relative to the contract of providing a temporary workforce solution during Mardi Gras 2023 by facilitating a job fair to identify and schedule workers to assist with the cleanup of Mardi Gras 2023 to increase the maximum aggregated amount of compensation payable by the city to the contractor, to extend the term of the agreement for an additional 1 year, and to modify or reaffirm certain terms and conditions as more fully set forth in amendment attached hereto as Exhibit 1 incorporated and made part hereof and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 34,016 by Councilmember Moreno and Morel, an ordinance to amend and reordain section 34.4A of the city of New Orleans, of the code of the city of New Orleans to establish the 2023 Mardi Gras parade schedule and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 34,017 by Councilmember Morel, an ordinance to amend and reordain section 34-1.1 of the code of the city of New Orleans to require annual reporting to the city council of the mayor's Mardi Gras advisory council's recommendations and otherwise to provide respects thereto. This concludes ordinance on first reading.
Those are all of that, I mean, on the, let's end.
Are we done? Councilman Thomas moves we adjourn, to which Councilman Green seconds. Please vote, voice vote. 7 yeas, no nays. We are adjourned.